IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast live on a Friday, which means, of course, Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. We're talking about wide receiver recruiting today, but especially the newest additions to Notre Dame class. Sean, I don't know if you were aware, and Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here, Sean Davis, recruiting analyst here at IrishBreakdown.com, as well as co-host of the Lucky Lefty podcast. But Sean, Mike Brown has been pretty busy since he came to Notre Dame. Not only did he have to get a new group of receivers ready for a bowl game and a big-time victory over the Oregon State Beavers in the Sun Bowl, but they also need to start recruiting, man. And it wasn't just figuring out the board. It wasn't just about, just picking up where you left off. We have seen now 8 wide receivers offered to the wide receiver board since Mike Brown took over as wide receiver coach for the University of Notre Dame. So we're going to talk about everything from each one of these players, and then we're going to have and that'll include maybe a little bit of film, play style, latest in their recruitment, all that type of stuff. But Sean, we're also going to talk about what we can deduce for Mike Brown and talk about what we can kind of guess about what he likes, what he doesn't like, what he's looking for, what his mission is as far as 2025 wide receiver recruitment. We'll also talk about a couple of the other offers in the second section of this podcast. We'll get to a mailbag. Throw your mailbag questions in at any time. But Sean, I'm excited about this one, man, because it's been interesting, hasn't it? Notre Dame has offered a couple big-time receivers, highly rated kids. They've offered a couple other kids that are being recruited by a lot of great programs. They've offered a couple kids that I would say are more good evaluations and guys that maybe don't have that recruiting background. So I'm excited to get into it today, man. And first and foremost, Sean Davis, how are you, my friend?
Yo, I'm feeling great, man. Absolutely. Good. It's the weekend. Feeling vibes. Took out the garbage this morning, ran into one of my childhood friends, caught up with him. So that was great. I was unable to, this is why I love on your people when you can, man, because his mom passed during the time that I was in treatment. So I wasn't able to pay condolences and see her. You know, she was kind of like a midwife and mentor for my wife when my daughter was born. So, and not being able to say goodbye to her and everything, but it was full circle, like running into him, being able to see him and, just going over, experiences we had when we were teenagers. And so, yeah, it's the day started out great, being able to talk about, we figured out that Malik has a recruiting bias that we had to break him from today. He has a recruiting. I called it a prejudice. He called it a bias.
All right. So here, tell me the position, and then I want to guess what the bias is. Okay, can we do that? Can you tell me the position?
Actually, it's geographical.
Huh.
But for Notre Dame,
he likes Ohio quarterbacks. I don't know. That's my guess. Yeah.
He likes anything Ohio, especially anything. The fact that Marcus Freeman comes from Dayton like him, oh my God. I hear about the Wright brothers, Dayton Flyers basketball, Marcus Freeman, him, like Dayton is like undefeated. But no, he just has a problem, man, with Canadian football players, man. I think
Why?
This is Chase Claypool experience.
Okay.
So, Chase came on as a pup, and according to him and others, Chase had no clue about the fundamentals of American football. He was just a big, strapping wide receiver kid, and they had to teach him the fundamentals. He's like, dude, at this point, why are we recruiting those type of kids? And I'm like, dude, you really have a problem with Canada and Connecticut. He doesn't like
talented, man. Because they're talented.
Do you know why he has a problem with Connecticut?
Yeah.
Drew Pine. He's like, why are we recruiting the best quarterback from Connecticut? Like, who falls for that? I think we got through to him today. I think we finally got through to him because he likes Ethan Long. He likes Ethan Long. He liked Delorier's film.
I like
it was just once he found out he was from Canada and that was his first season in Georgia. He immediately went 180. Immediately.
See, that's Malik's problem, Sean, is that he loved Antoine Delorier when he thought he was a Georgia kid, right? And then as soon as he found out he was a Canada kid, he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. not sure about that cat. Yeah,
Yep.
man. That's funny.
Yep.
That's really
So
funny.
that's that. I thought that would be something like to start the recruiting show, like the
Love it.
geographical bias. Because let's be honest. Let's be honest, Ryan. I have recruiting biases.
Yep.
You have recruiting biases. Whether
Yep.
it's a certain program, like we'll give credit to a kid from a certain program just because he's from that traditional program, right? If we hear a
Yep.
kid from a certain state, we're like, okay, let me watch his film, right? If we hear a certain coach is in, if we hear that Mike Mickens is in on a two-star kid,
Yep.
you're like, okay, this kid must be pretty good. If we hear another coach is recruiting a two-star kid, we're like, like we do. That's just human beings, man. We have biases, and it shows up in recruiting as well. That just happens to be his biases. I know for me, I can flat out say I was biased against Sean Sevillano Jr. in the 24 cycle.
Okay.
Based upon certain things. And then once I watched his film and saw his work ethic on his IG, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. Right? It is what it is.
Funny. It's funny.
I think a lot of people have wanted to. Carson Hobbs is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
When he initially committed to Notre Dame, there are a lot of people that were like, I don't know. And you go watch his senior film with all the great wide receivers he had to defend and the job he did, you have no choice but to say, okay. All right.
Yeah, we all have biases, man. I've had to rid myself of some scouting biases, Sean. I used to really love nuance.
What was your biggest one?
No. Two biggest misses that I used to make all the time, I guess. Quarterback is one just in general, but defensive ends, edge players with great nuance and hand play and have a pass rush plan. Folks, at least when we're rejected from the college game to the NFL, traits matter, brother. Like at the end of the day, traits matter. I missed on Derek Barnett, big time count out of Tennessee, because I was like, hey, man, I don't care if he's super flexible. I don't care if he has great hip flexion. I don't care. Look at those. Look at those hands. Look at that pass rush plan. And sorry, some things don't translate to the next level. Like they just don't translate as well. So, yeah, I would say big-bodied edges with great hands and pass rush plan was probably my my early bias. I don't think I really have a regional bias though, Sean. Like I'm trying to think. Like I'm actually like I'm well versed in scouting like FCS football, Division II football, G5 level. Like I don't really have any bias as far as like because there's an NFL bias to like Power 5 schools, for instance, right? Like we want to get all the guys from the top-notch Power 5 schools that have a certain amount of starts under their belt, yada yada yada. And there's some validation to that. I mean, usually those guys do turn out really well, but like I don't think I really have a regional bias though. I don't have a regional bias. It's kind of weird, but
that's interesting because I have a regional bias. Everybody from Chicago is good. That's my regional bias, right? All the Chicago kids are great. That's my regional bias. Other than that,
man. As long as you're aware of it, though, right? Like as long as you're aware of it, that's all that matters because that'll make you kind of check yourself occasionally, right? Like that'll make you kind of check yourself.
But
so,
do you guys in the Jersey, Philly area? Because I'll be honest, there's a bias. There's disrespect to city kids from a football standpoint from suburban programs. Like they don't respect city programs in football. They don't. They'll respect the Catholic school programs, but like public league programs in football, they don't respect. You flip it in basketball, the public school system doesn't respect the suburban schools.
Well, I'll say this. In Jersey, there's a lot more quality football in the North Jersey section than South Jersey, right? So like North Jersey's where all great Catholic schools are, like Paramus Catholic and Bergen Catholic and St. Peter's and Don Bosco and all those schools, right? So I would say that I mean, I generally understand it. Like I played football in South Jersey. So like, I understand that North Jersey has a lot more talent per capita than what South Jersey does, for instance. But I would say that there's a bias from like, if a North Jersey person heard that there was like this super talented dude in South Jersey, right? They'd be like, he's just playing against nobodies, right? Like that would be their bias. Like, cause Jonathan Taylor played down in South Jersey. He was a Salem kid. Like he was about 30 minutes from where I grew up. You know what I mean? And I think there was a stick because he was a 3-star, even though he dominated for years at Salem. because he's a South Jersey guy, right? Like he's beating up on bad competition, like that type
Yeah.
of thing. So I'd say that that's the only bias really in Jersey, as much as like North Jersey doesn't give South Jersey guys any credit, which
So,
is what it is.
because I know we're about to get into the wide receivers, but just
Yeah.
popped in my mind. And this
Okay.
is really great conversation that's going. I'm going to lean on your scouting expertise. Do you think that's impacted recruiting from
Mhm.
the standpoint of kids realizing, unlike years ago, where they felt like I have to get to a big time program in order to get to the
Yep.
next level? That's totally different now. And we see it on an annual basis. There are
Yeah.
non-power five schools that put plenty of players in the NFL and have done so over the last decade.
Yep.
And now kids, instead of trying to uh, get a big time program to believe in them, like, yo, I'm going to go and
Mhm.
commit to this school that's been on me from the jump.
Yep.
They have a history of putting players in the NFL. And now with the portal, if I actually want to transfer up, I
Yeah.
can in 2 or 3 years. I think everything that has impacted recruiting a lot because we're starting to see the
Mhm.
non-power five school transfers pretty much become the incoming freshmen
Yeah.
for a lot of big time programs, and that's hurting high school recruits. It's really a domino effect.
It's hurting high school recruits. You know how else is hurting, Sean? The G5, the G5 level,
Mhm.
the FCS level, because we're going to see, and it's already happening, but it's going to happen even more. Is that you're going to go, some of these players who are a little bit under recruited or under the radar for whatever reason, they're going to go FCS or they're going to go G5. They're going to play really well and be developed for a couple years, and then they're going to vote for a Power Five team because
Mhm.
it almost becomes like a feeder to a degree. Like I feel bad
Mhm.
for FCS, like outside of like maybe the North Dakota States and South Dakota States, who are always going to be able to keep a lot of their players overall. Like a lot of those teams, man, they're just gonna get depleted year in and year out. They're just gonna be taking their players on a consistent basis. I mean, like Sean, I don't know if I told you, it's on a podcast, so like it's not a secret, but Tucker Kraft, that's playing for the Green Bay Packers now.
Mhm.
I had him on the podcast before his final year at South Dakota State. Alabama offered him six figures trying to pluck him from South Dakota State because you know why? Because South Dakota State can't match that, obviously. Like they can't
Mhm.
match it. It's not a reality in the FCS level and the Missouri Valley level and even in the G5 level. Like a lot of G5 schools can't play a player $100,000 to stick around. Like you can't do
Mhm.
that. That's just not, it's not sustainable, man. So yeah, recruiting's wild though. Recruiting is absolutely wild. And we'll get into the wildness, obviously, of the 2025 wide receiver board that is continuing to expand here, Sean. I'm going to go chronologically. So, like I said, as soon as Mike Brown came aboard, there was a reshaping of the board. 8 players have been added to the 2025 wide receiver class. So let's go one by one. I'm going to try to play film as long as my internet is cooperative, and we'll be able to break down, and you guys will be able to see a little bit of what we're talking about. We're not going to as much super focus on watching the film and breaking down play after play after play. We're going to talk about the player, what we've seen from them already on film, what the latest in recruiting is, and how it could potentially fit in Notre Dame. So, Sean, I think the perfect place to start is with Raiden Vines Bright, who is a wide receiver now at Bradenton, Florida, IMG Academy, which a lot of people hate. A lot of people are going to hear that and be like, "Oh, Notre Dame has no shot." Well, let's wait on this one a little bit because he's not a traditional IMG kid, right? Where he's going to spend multiple years at IMG and he's a Southern kid. And there's a lot of stereotypes that obviously go in there. He's from Arizona. And I actually, Sean, and I'll bring up the film as we're talking about him. Notre Dame was doing their work on Raiden Vines Bright even before Mike Brown came aboard. When Chancey Stuckey was still the wide receiver coach, the the offensive staff was doing their homework on this young man, and I think that he would have been offered regardless of if Mike Brown would have been the wide receiver coach or not. He's a player that Notre Dame likes. Now he's 6'1", 180 pounds, Sean. I think as we kind of watch his film a little bit, we're not going to watch the whole thing, but this is the type of kid that I think Notre Dame is going to be looking at, and we'll talk more about this as far as like what Mike Brown might be valuing. But he's a true outside kid, you know, a guy that could play Z to the field at times, could maybe play the boundary depending on how his body reconfigures itself and continues to develop properly moving forward. But Notre Dame has obviously made a little bit of an impact on this young man. They were able to see him at IMG Academy this week, Sean, because they've been down at IMG now for a couple days. Raiden Vines Bright is one of the early names that we need to know. New on the board, 2025 wide receiver.
And they got a lot of reasons to go to IMG games, right? To visit IMG this season, which normally hasn't been beneficial to Notre Dame, but Marcus Freeman and his staff, they have the audacity, right? They're like, we're going to get into the fight. We don't care if it's normally an SEC feeder school. Notre Dame is here, and we're here to stay. And this kid, I will put him, because once we get through all of these wide receivers, I would be interested in asking, certain nuances of who's the best route runner, who has the best release package. And I will put this young man as possibly having one of the most polished release packages to get off the line against bumper run coverage from what I've seen. Explosive. And one of the things I think that is linear that we'll talk about amongst all these guys is that, he's great with the ball in his hands after the catch. He's great, and you can use him boundary, field, slot, backfield, swing routes out the backfield, different type of formations. You can use him in a screen game. He's just a weapon, a great chess piece that you can use not only to stretch the defense vertically, but to be able to stretch the defense horizontally as well and make them defend every blade of grass. So, this kid is absolutely fantastic. Love this film. Can't wait to see what he does taking a step up in competition, because IMG pretty much goes around and plays every team that's at the top of each state. Like, they'll go to this. Matter of fact, last year another kid that's at IMG at the same position. I'm sure we're going to get to. I watched this film. He was playing against Mark Zachary and Ben Davis last year, on his film. So that just showed. And Ben Davis, I believe, won the state championship in Indiana. So that just goes to show you, the level of competition that he's going to have to raise his game against down at IMG.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because obviously Arizona is expanding. It's expanding quickly as far as the level of talent in the state of Arizona. But IMG, you're playing the best against the best. You're traveling everywhere. You're not just playing Florida teams. You're going up, like you said. Last year they went to DeSmet, obviously DeSmet in St. Louis, and played against Christian Gray. You talked about Ben Davis and Mark Zachary this past year as well. I mean, they're going to go out to Cali. They're going to play schools in Georgia. They're going to play a really tough schedule. And we'll talk about another IMG kid. Sean, I almost did a breakdown, and I almost did a breakdown of the just IMG wide receivers on the board. And let me know if my internet's spotty, because I feel like is it a little spotty?
Bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
It's a little bit. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to stop watching film then, man. Everyone's a critic in the chat. Everyone's a critic. Fine. We're not going to watch film anymore then, okay? Take that. Posers. Anyway, moving on.
I can bring it up.
Talk about their other wide receiver. What's that? No, it's fine. We got it. We'll be all right. We can talk about it because we've already seen the film. We'll just talk about what we like about the players, where the latest is. So basically, Notre Dame had visited IMG already to see several players, but Raiden Vines Bright is obviously included in that, Sean. And I know they're trying to get him up to campus. He's never been on campus at Notre Dame. I know there's some level of interest there. So we shall see if Notre Dame's able to make the arrangements to be able to get him up to South Bend, Indiana. Next guy, Sean, second wide receiver that was offered by Mike Brown. Tanuk Hines, who's a wide receiver out of Houston, Texas, Decaney, 6'1", 190 pounds. Very strange. Sean, I would love your perspective on the film, because he was a little strange to me to watch. Okay, and here's why. I watched him and I looked at his body and I was like, it looks a lot like Rico Flores to me, body type wise. I'm like, it looks like Rico to me. And then I watch his game. So my immediate thought was he's going to be a Z receiver. That's the outside field position for people that aren't like X's and O's guys. But then, Sean, he plays like a boundary. And I'm like, his best part of it is like he's mossing dudes. He's winning through contact. He's breaking tackles after the catch. I'm like, physicality is, even though he reports a 4.41 electronic 40-yard dash, and I do think he's pretty fast, but he is really kind of a contested catch dude and physicality dude. It's a little bit odd, man. It's a little bit odd. So I mean, I literally have a breakdown coming out where I talked about all the fits and everything, and I'm like, looks like a Z, plays like an X. Just kind of like a weird profile to me to Nuke Hines out of the state of Texas.
You know what? You talk about this kid, you're spot on with the film breakdown and what you saw. I was shocked to see that he ran a 4.41 after watching this film. I'm like, oh, okay. And
You
that's the thing.
you could have told me it was 4.55, and I would have been like, yeah, okay, sounds good, sounds
Right.
good. Like
That sounds
he
good.
doesn't utilize his speed in his game, which is kind of weird. It's kind of weird.
So from a scouting standpoint, when you say that he doesn't utilize his speed,
Yep.
that shows that like, yo, there's a lot of untapped possibilities there. Even though he shows that he's a playmaker, like if you can get him to actually play to his speed on the
Yep.
football field, technique, knowledge of the game, coaching. Now we have somebody we're talking about that could possibly be a top 50, prospect for the NFL draft, just from a talent and size standpoint.
Yeah. And like Jason brought up in the chat, Sean, he says, so he's fast and physical. That's the issue though, Jason, for me, is that like I think he's fast. I see it in spurts, but he doesn't really utilize it much, right? Like he's much more like he's not a nuanced player in any regard. Like he's a guy that's like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna get down the fields in a
Yeah.
jump ball situation. I'm going to win those contested catches. I'm going to break a tackle or two occasionally, and I'm going to make plays that way. So he's an interesting player, but I wouldn't say, Sean, that he plays to 4.41 right now. I would say that he
No.
probably has the tools, but he's a kid that I think needs a little bit of nuance to his game, right? Like he needs Mike Brown. If
Yeah.
Tanu Hines ended up with Notre Dame, and I don't envision him being in the class as of now because he's never visited. I just haven't heard a ton of momentum building on that side. I just think there might be a couple wide receivers that are higher on Notre Dame's board in general. But if Tanu Hines did end up at Notre Dame, let's say hypothetically, then I mean, he's a guy that would greatly benefit from a technical coach like a Mike Brown would be, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
agree with you on that. Yeah.
So we'll see, obviously, where things go with Tanuk if they're able to get him on campus. If he's a guy that they push for. So yeah, but as of right now, I think that he's just more a toolsy kid that's on the board that's worth just kind of keeping a closer eye on. One guy, Sean, that I would say Notre Dame is high on already, or Notre Dame is making moves with already, is Wayne, New Jersey, DePaul Catholic wide receiver Elijah Burris. Of course,
Mhm.
son of Plexico. Everybody knows this story by now who visits this channel. Former New York Giant wide receiver Plexico Burris, his son Elijah, who is a New Jersey guy, North Jersey player. He visited last weekend, Sean, for Junior Day. Was his first visit to campus. Literally less than a week after getting offered, he made a decision that he wanted to go visit Notre Dame. So we have to. And so I'm now looking. So how kind of coming out of this visit, you like where things are with Elijah Burris. I think that Notre Dame, he's a guy that Notre Dame may push for. I think Elijah Burris is pretty high on Notre Dame already. Now on film, Sean, I know you've seen it. I would love to hear your kind of breakdown of it first. But like he's got a lot of tools to work with, man. There is something to work there. He's not incredibly productive right now, but I do think that there are tools to work with, obviously.
You think? And this is another one, right? Where I don't think the bias, I think the expectation was when you knew the connection, you expected 6'3, 6'4, 190, 200, right? And then you see the measurables, and you're like, oh man. You start watching the film, and look, immediately what you see is that the kid has suddenness to his game. Once he gets the ball in his hand, he's good after the catch.
Yep.
Even then, production isn't there, but it makes sense that he would know how to run routes, being the son of Plaxico Burris. Like,
Yep.
that's been ingrained in him. Like, yo, the technical aspect, like everything else will come. You'll get faster, you'll get stronger. But as long as you have this as a foundation, and he has that, he has that. You watch his game. I'm looking forward to seeing the production take a step forward. That's going to be the final box that needs to be checked for me. Like the circuit, what he does, how people look at him, yeah, I'll be looking at that, the platforms and everything else. But the next step for me is the production and the senior film early on.
Yeah.
I want to see the first 4 games. Okay, he's taking that next step. And I think they see Mike Brown, we'll get to it, but he, as a
Yep.
coach on the staff, that I think he's very similar in the way he evaluates. And I'm looking forward to hearing him talk and being questioned about, the new offers, what he thinks about these kids, because, it just begs to or lends itself to a couple of questions I've already seen in the chat about comparing him to his predecessors recruiting. That's going to be very interesting. But I love this kid. I really do. I love this kid. And this is the question we ask ourselves. You can always go after the top kids, right? That's easy. Everybody in the world knows who the top wide receivers in each class are.
Yep.
The kids that give you the floor of your positional room are vitally important. Because if you have a really good kid that's the floor of your positional room, more than likely you're going to have a pretty good positional room. Like, that's pretty good. If the worst you can do in that room ends up being Elijah Burris at some point,
Yep,
you're probably in pretty good shape.
Sean, I'm a little mixed on Elijah Burris because here's where I am with him. 6'1", 170. Again, he's out of DePaul Catholic in the state of New Jersey. I think he's got pretty good speed. I think he's really quick and has good hit mobility. Excuse me. I think he's a really good route runner. All those things are great. Where's the production, man? That's what I'm waiting for. I really hope, and this could be the case, and I actually think I may be wrong here. I think that Notre Dame might be ahead of the curve on Elijah Burris, and I'm hoping they are, because if he goes out, and this is possible, if he goes out and balls as a senior, then he's going to be one of the big risers in the 2025 wide receiver class nationally. Like, just forget about Notre Dame, for instance, because he has every physical traits that you look at and say, that's what I want a wide receiver, right? He's flexible. He's a good route runner. He shows ability to get in and out of breaks. He's got good overall speed. Everything there is interesting. I'm just looking at it, Sean, and I'm just like, kid does this, and this well. Why did he only have 400 something yards last year receiving? I'm just like, that doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know. So I know he plays in a good league up north, plays against the Bergen Catholics and those schools. I get it, but I just want to see him have a breakout senior year. And if he does, then I'll be fully on board with Elijah Burris. And I think Notre Dame is going to push hard for Elijah Burris. So he's definitely on the board. There's no doubt. And we'll see if he's able to take the next step.
It's funny because people in the chat are like, I'm tired of the diamonds in the rough. That's funny. Will Fuller was one.
Yeah, he was a diamond. He was a three. He was a 3-star out of Roman Catholic in PA. Yep.
Chase Claypool was a diamond in the rough. Like, dude, we have this thought that recruiting is like, let's go get, Devontae Smith was a diamond in the rough for Alabama. Like, Alabama's best.
He was like their third or fourth ranked receiver in his class. Yeah,
absolutely. Right. It's like, dude, that's how you put a wide receiver room together. You don't put teams together just going after all the top guys. That's not how positional rooms work. That's not how football teams work.
Well, and Sean, we'll get to the rest of this list, but Notre Dame offered a couple kids that are top 50 recruits nationally. Yeah. Like they're putting together a board. It's not just a bunch of Elijah Burris where you're trying to bet on the curve. I mean, like we'll talk about Michael Terry III out of Texas, who's like, that dude's a bona fide stud. Like he's a top 50 something recruit by multiple platforms. Like that dude is legit. So Notre Dame's not just offering diamonds in the rough. It's a balance act, right? Like you're putting together a board. You can't just that's like me in the NFL draft space saying like, I'm about to have a draft, right, Sean? And the only guys I have on my board are first round picks. Like, no, that's not how that works. You're not going to be able to get all those guys. Like you have to create a board that makes that next step. So
because fifth round picks turn into all pros. Sixth round, we see it every year. There's value there. That's why you have scouts. That's why you have to have scouts and relationships. Ryan Roberts and what he does, guys, not just talking about Notre Dame, but what he does on a daily basis. He has value. Guys like him are the ones that are suggesting players to pro scouts. that don't have time to get to see every kid. Elijah Burris, and I'm not saying this is the case, Elijah Burris could have very well been a suggestion to somebody on the Notre Dame staff.
Could have been.
And then all of a sudden they're like, yo, we found this kid. We love him. He comes from great stock, NFL DNA. Let's get on this kid. Because he could be a diamond in the rough. That's the way college, that's why you have to have analysts, staffing that's bigger than just the football staff and the coaches, because those are the guys that are connected to guys like you, Ryan, other guys that are in the business that know these kids from smaller places and smaller schools that get exposed to bigger programs. Like dude, I'll give you a great story. Jimmy Butler was right up at Marquette, right? He was drafted by the Bulls and Gar Forman, but it came from an area. Dude, it came from one of his buddies that he knew 20 years ago that suggested to him, hey, I've attended a couple of Marquette practices. This Jimmy Butler kid, you need to really start looking at him. And the Bulls made a couple of trips. They looked at him and they ended up drafting him. He came off the bench behind Luol Deng and eventually became a star. And he was a suggestion. He was a suggestion by a guy that does work like Ryan Roberts on the basketball side, but Gar Forman will get all the credit. Oh, that was a great pick. Like, dude, if you didn't get the suggestion, you would have never known about the kid. And this is, what scouting, what recruiting is all about, right? I believe Notre Dame just added to their analyst staff. That's great. Mike Denbrock coming. That added to the recruiting board. Like you said, Ryan, they're putting together a board. Mike Denbrock added to the recruiting board. Mike Brown added to that recruiting board. There are a lot of different factors that are going to bring in a lot of different looks and a lot of different kids that might not be your prototypical top 50, top 100, 5-star, high 4-star wide receiver. Mm-hmm. But like we just talked about at the beginning of the show, there's talent everywhere.
Yeah.
There's great talent everywhere. And you just can't look under the same rock that everybody else is looking under. Yeah, we all know the kids that Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, they're going to be on the same kids. Yep. But thinking not strange, Notre Dame fans, see, this is the key. You know what cued me in to the fact it's not just Elijah Burris. It's been a lot of kids that Notre Dame has offered. Notre Dame offers, and then here comes Michigan. 2 days later. Here comes Oregon a week later.
Sean, can I just say to the chat, and we're not going to spend too much, but like NC Notre Dame fan, Notre Dame has already been out to see Jadon Blair since the opening happened, since we entered the open period. Like they've been out to see Jadon Blair. Acting like they're just out seeing 3 stars and nobodies it's pretty short-sighted. It's pretty ridiculous. I mean, that's not happening. The wide receiver board right now is not just 3 stars and below or whatever. Like they're pushing hard for Taylon Taylor. They're pushing hard for Derek Meadows. Both those kids are considered top 50 players by at least one scouting service. They just offered Michael Terry III, who is a legitimate top 50 stud out of the state of Texas. Yes, you're going to fulfill the board with all different types of players. That doesn't mean that you're going to end up with a class that is, I don't know. I just think it's a little short-sighted. That's not how recruiting works. It's not how boards work, right?
That's why we have the expertise of Ryan Roberts, who floats back and forth, that can pretty much tell you the similarities between NFL teams preparing for a draft and college teams preparing for recruiting. You have boards that you have to put together. You have to build a plan for contingencies, right? You have to understand where you sit. In recruiting, it's a little bit different because you have to be honest and evaluate where you sit with a kid at a certain point in recruiting. To say, okay, we need to go add somebody else to the board just in case this doesn't happen. It's the same thing in the NFL, right? If another kid, we want this kid in the 3rd round. That's what we have in value. If another team jumps in front of us, then this is the next kid that we need at this position. So, we wish it would be perfect and you could just line up. Notre Dame could get their pick of the top 10 wide receivers and take the 4 that they want every year.
Yeah. I mean, but also, Sean, like, there's a bust factor on like the top guys. I mean, it's. I'm not saying NC Notre Dame fan is saying this. I'm really not. I'm just saying like some people's perspective on it is like, oh, just top 10 on the 247 rankings. It's like 6 of them are gonna bust, man. Like it's just
Mhm.
gonna happen. Like
Mhm.
it's just not how the world works. I mean, fit matters so much, and you know
Mhm.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's Elijah Burris. Let's now go to the next one. This might be my favorite offer at wide receiver of the 8, Sean. This might be it. Lex Cyrus, wide
Mm.
receiver, Harrisburg, PA, Susquehanna Township.
Oh, man.
5'10, 170 pounds. So he's a smaller guy, a little bit of a diminutive type of player.
Mhm.
Sean, I wish I could bring up the film. I have a film breakdown of all the wide receivers coming out, guys, by the way, at irishbreakdown.com. You should go
Mhm.
check out that. When it's out, it should be out sometime today. Sean, this kid, 10.45 100-meter runner, top 100 player by multiple platforms. He's being courted by some of the best colleges and all of best programs in college football right now. This kid is fast, quick, explosive. He's lightning in a bottle, my friend. I'm a big fan of Lex Cyrus.
You want to talk about film that pops from the first play? Lex Cyrus, man. It's like, yo, if I would definitely take him and Burris in the class. Like you take once again, we're talking about putting together a class
I would take Lex Cyrus right now. If he
right
wanted to come,
now.
I'd be like, yes, yes, please.
Absolutely. And that's what we're talking about, putting together a class, right? Because why? The
Mhm.
top kids at wide receiver, and I think you would agree with this, Ryan.
Yep.
The time it takes to get top kids based upon certain positions, your quarterbacks are going to commit earlier than most. It's very rare that a top quarterback is taking it up until like November, December. Very
Yep.
rare. Quarterbacks want to be the head of a recruiting class. They want to commit early, and most of your top quarterbacks will be locked into a program. Even if they decommit and change, they jump early. Wide receivers come off the board fairly late, the top ones. Because they're,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, you want to say they're prima donnas, whatever. It is what it is. The wide
Yep.
receiver position is one of those positions where, yo, it's going to go down to the wire. Like, they're not going to commit early. So when you can get a kid like Alex Cyrus, you can jump on him early. You can get him to commit. And like I said, if you're going after the top kids and this is the kid that you get in the class that's not one of the top kids, oh man,
Yep.
your position room is you're going to be pretty good. You're going to be in pretty good shape.
I hope that Notre Dame is able to get him to campus, Sean. I don't know if he's a realistic option for Notre Dame. I genuinely don't know yet. We'll see what the level of interest in if they're able to get him there this winter or spring.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that kid's good. You need more
Mm-hmm.
of that because Sean he fills 2 areas that Notre Dame needs more of. One, that quick twitch after catch stuff, which you always need more of that in today's game. And he
Mm-hmm.
can fly, man. I wrote in my report, Sean, the size is going to make him more of a slot option on the next level. He's not going to be able to play outside all the time, but I am putting him at times outside at times because that speed, sir. I'm not trying to put that in tight quarters all the time. I want to let him open up and run, man. That kid's special. So we'll see if Notre Dame's able to make any headway with him, guys. I know that he said a lot of good things about Notre Dame when they offered, but we'll have to see. Can they get him to campus? Can the fit make sense? Are you able to move the needle with him? He's a really good player.
We have to
Next guy. Yeah.
have Ricky Waters people reach out to the home people in Harrisburg and
Yeah, man. Yeah,
speed up
man.
that process and get them on campus.
Yeah. I want to, and someone's saying play the clips because my internet's fine. The problem is that when I stream the clips, it makes my internet go wonky because now I'm running 2 different tabs. I think that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
where the annoyance comes from. So my apologies, guys. Truly. Let's go to Nasir Newkirk, Sean, who I know
Mm-hmm.
you can run a go route from the Z. Jim, the go route is the outside field position. You can run a go route there. You can run a post route there too. It's harder to consistently win vertically one-on-one though from the slot, if that makes sense, because there's linebackers. There's third level with the safeties. There's going to be nickels. You kind of get bracketed a lot more inside. Outside is a lot more easy to get one-on-one coverage working vertically, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Nasir Newkirk, Sean, Greensboro, North Carolina, Dudley. I know we have talked about him just in a text chain. I don't know if we talked about him on a show yet. I don't think so, because I think he was offered this week, right? So
this week, yeah.
Yeah. So we haven't talked about him yet. Nasir Newkirk, though, Sean, 6'2", 185, also a really, really good basketball player for Dudley, which I know you love. Literally, he has in his bio on Twitter, I think it's like Nas Newkirk or something. I forget what his Twitter handle is, X handle, whatever. But he has a football link and he has a basketball link, and he's pretty
good.
Dang, yeah. And he's also, I think he runs track as well, and he's a pretty good sprinter as well. So I would say, Sean, he is a very springy athlete, is the best way to put it, I would say.
I agree with that. And there is flexibility from an attribute standpoint in these players that have been offered recently by Notre Dame, but there are also familiar traits amongst them all, in my opinion. And like you said, this kid, I love two-sport athletes. I just do. I think it helps with agility. I think it helps with footwork. I think it activates certain twitch muscles, that gives a greater advantage. So I love this kid. Look, I think Shrewsbury might get jealous if he actually clicks on to his basketball. Like, yo, Freeman, yeah, if you get this kid, can we talk about him possibly playing both sports? But athletes, right? Well, haven't we football players? That's something we've been talking about. Like, Notre Dame needs to just get more football players, dudes that just play the game, love the game. You can use them everywhere. I think some of the offers have kind of gone in that direction, in my opinion. Good film. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have athletes, it's very important, the people that edit their film. I just want you to understand that. Because whoever edited Lex Cyrus's film did a fantastic job of picking the right plays and building you up.
Yes.
Starting you off on a high and then building you up and finishing strong. That's how you put together a great piece of film by high school players. And Lex Cyrus, whoever did his, was top notch. But like you said, Newkirk kid, man. I watched both films. Very impressed. But this, once again, Brian, if these are the kids that are opposite of the top kids, there's really nothing to be mad about.
Isn't Newkirk's profile so weird, Sean? He's rated as a 3-star, but he's incredibly productive at Dudley. He's had 34 touchdowns in his career so far. He had 50-something receptions for over 1,100 yards and 16 touchdowns last year. And by the way, he's got a Georgia offer as well, Sean. So it's like he has a pretty good offer list. He's productive, but he's not rated that high on whatever recruiting service that you frequent, which is just kind of an odd profile.
And what does that mean? I'm glad you brought this up. I'm about to throw you a nice alley-oop. I don't know. My nickname is Podcast PG.
Podcast PG. Okay.
Yeah, I throw the best alley-oops to anybody I'm talking to. I set you up. Here's a setup for you, Double R.
Got it. You're the point guard. Got it. Yep.
What do we see consistently from Georgia? An ability to evaluate, recruit, and coach profiles like Nas Newkirk at wide receiver.
Yep.
Every year they come up with somebody that's able to be impactful in their offense, in their profile, right? Yep. So it's similar to when we see a school like Iowa recruit an offensive lineman. Immediately you say to yourself, okay, this kid he might be a 3-star, but if I was on him at offensive line, it must be something here.
Yep.
So for that profile with Newkirk, when you see Georgia get on a kid like that, at that profile, and what they do with those type of receivers, it kind of leads you to believe, like, okay, that's something there because the production is there. And that's what we're waiting to see from a kid like Elijah Burrs. There it is. Go ahead and dunk it.
Man, Sean, it didn't take me long to like this here Newkirk, man. It didn't take me long. It just didn't. He's because he checks every box, right?
Mhm.
He has 6'2", 185. He's long. He's also interested in visiting Notre Dame. He's already talked about trying to set up a visit there. Basketball background is a big plus. Georgia likes him. That's a big plus. Over 1,100 yards last year. Basketball player. Like he's a very interesting player overall. And he's a high academic kid, man. There's no way, Sean, that a big time basketball and football player who's getting recruited by Georgia could be a good student. It's impossible. That can't happen. That can't happen. But hey, it can. Really good body control. Really good ability to I would say this too, Sean. I don't know if you agree with this because a lot of what he is right now is working down the field, being a
Mhm.
vertical type of dude. But I think he's pretty loose, man. Like I think he could be a route runner too. I think he could be a Z. I think he could be an X if his body develops. Like it's possible, man. He's got a lot of twitch to him, which I really like. Speaking of twitch, Sean, I love to hear your perspective on this young man.
All right.
Ironton, Ohio high school wide receiver Sean Terry, who visited
Mm.
Notre Dame this past weekend and got offered. Now, this is the smallest player that we're going to talk about today.
Mhm.
Listed 5'9", 170, Sean, which tells me he's probably not 5'9". But that's another conversation for another day. He's probably CJ Sanders, is probably what he is. CJ, I think, was like 5'8" and some change or
Hey,
whatever.
CJ was a heck of a returner, dude.
He
Hey,
was, though, man.
he's a heck of a
And this
returner.
kid is the word fun, right? He's a fun football player because if you watch Ironton, Sean, which apparently is a really good program. I know it's a lower level of football in the state of Ohio. It's not like
Mhm.
great football competition wise, but this kid, screen game, wide receiver, runs the football a ton, returns punts, returns kicks. I mean, he averaged like over 30 yards per punt return this past year. He also plays corner on the team and is pretty dang good defensive back as well for Ironton, man. I don't think that he has great long speed overall, in my opinion, but for a offense that is potentially looking for a little bit more after catch and creativity in space and great field vision, excuse me. Sean Terry certainly brings that, man. He is a jitterbug. He's exciting when he gets into space.
I think one thing that is linear amongst every piece of film we watched on these new offers is that you go into it with a question mark, right? Well, we're
Yep.
just like everybody else. Like, okay,
Sure.
really haven't heard about this kid. Let me look at his offers. Like,
I didn't know
oh,
anything
okay.
about this kid. I didn't know anything about
No,
this kid. Yep.
right? And Ironton, dude, shout out to Ironton High School. Because usually we wait for the kids to post their pictures from the visit. Ironton
Yep.
High School has
They were
been
ready,
like,
man. They don't
man.
get a lot of they don't get a lot of Notre Dame kids potentially. Yeah, yeah, they were ready. They were ready.
And so, yo, they've been on social media just pushing the photos from the Notre Dame weekend. We appreciate you guys. But once again, just impressive film. And if you get caught up in the measurables and you forget that we really are, except from seeing a production from Elijah Burris, the one
Yep.
thing we can say about everybody is that, yo, these kids are playmakers. That's
Yeah.
what we're seeing. We're seeing playmakers. And so
And this,
now in the, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, no, you finish. You finish, and then
No,
we'll.
in evaluation, and
Yep.
it's something we'll dig deep into. Is like, okay, are we starting to elevate production and playmaking? And what does that entail, or what does that detail about coaching or integration into the offense, or where the offense might go? It's going to be a very interesting conversation as we get into that. But that's something that we all, as we watch film, myself, you, and we discuss things, and then we talk to Brian separately about things at times. We'll differ on kids. I might be higher than on a certain kid than you are, and vice versa. But we all agree, like, I wouldn't be mad.
Yep.
And Sean Terry falls right to that category. Like, yeah, Ironton, haven't heard about the school, didn't really hear about the kid. Okay, he's a 3-star, but
Hmm.
the kid's a playmaker. Yeah, I see the measurables. I understand. We would love to have kids like the Cam Williams profile, Taylor Taylor profile, but this dude can play. And
Right.
isn't that what it's about? Like, didn't we
Yeah.
just see a kid come from lacrosse and prove, hey, he could play? Yeah, I know he wasn't on scholarship. I know he's a lacrosse player, but
Mm-hmm.
we got to get this kid on the field. Why? Because he can play. Like, it
Right.
doesn't matter that he's diminutive. He
Yep.
can play.
Yep.
And I love seeing that. I'm all for productive players that can play the game of football. All for it.
And there's going to be some people that are, the level of competition thing, right? As far as like
Mhm.
Ironton not playing the best competition, that's obviously a big step forward to Notre Dame. But here's his offer list, Sean, and this is what you want to see. I'm not worried about recruiting rankings as much. Recruiting rankings are
Mhm.
nice, like if it verifies stuff, but offer list matters more. So Notre Dame, Auburn, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisville, Michigan, Michigan State, Missouri, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, USC, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, and Wisconsin are the Power 5 schools that have offered Sean Terry. So he's being recruited by a lot of good schools right now. So
Give me
yeah.
give me the two schools that are recruiting him that make at that position and make you say, and even if you want to go down to the profile that make you say, ding, 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 there
Yep.
might be
I,
something here.
I would say for me, the main one, actually the two, USC and Penn State would be the two for
Mm.
me. Because Penn State typically, I know they did down year at wide receiver this year.
Mhm.
Wait, is someone in chat saying Jordan Faison's not fast? Okay, anyway. Sorry. My apologies. I got distracted there for a second. So Penn State, though, Sean, has had a long string recently of some very good wide receiver play, right?
Mhm.
From Chris Godwin to Jahan Dotson. Like there's been some dudes at wide receiver at Penn State in recent years. Lots. And I know I'm missing. Oh, the what was the Washington? What's his first name? That's playing with Jacksonville Jaguars now. Parker Washington. He was a really good player as well. Penn
Mhm.
State has traditionally done pretty well because not all those guys were high recruits. I don't think Jahan Dotson was a high recruit at all. I'm pretty sure he was a 3-star kid. But
Right.
regardless, Penn State found him. Pittsburgh's done a decent job at evaluating wide receivers for the most part, but that's another conversation. USC, though, is a big one, though, Sean. Look, USC is not a great. Lincoln Riley in general is not a great developer of defense and the offensive line, for instance, right? At least he
Mhm.
hasn't in his career so far without Bill Bedenbaugh by his side on the offensive line. But what does
Absolutely.
Lincoln Riley do? Finds quarterbacks, transfer
Yeah.
portal usually, and he
Mhm.
finds pass catchers. Like he usually
Yes.
attracts those guys. So the
Yes.
fact that USC and Penn State are a couple of the schools that are on him, it's a good sign. It's a good
Yeah.
sign. Yeah, it's a good
Having
sign.
Josh Heupel after him, pretty
Tennessee
good
too.
sign
Yeah,
as well.
that's a good one. Yep, that's a
Yeah.
good one. I would say even though it's a little bit of a slightly downgrade from the competition level, but even like I said, Pittsburgh, man. Pittsburgh found Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh found they found what's his name? Jordan Addison. Like they
Jordan
found
Addison.
some pretty good wide receivers, man. So yeah, yeah. He yeah. So I think that he is a very interesting football player. I don't know if Notre Dame's going to push for him, but like he got offered, came for junior day, and seemed to love it. So we'll see what happens between the two as we move forward here.
Your
Yep.
question, Brian, isn't me just
Yep.
setting you up. Who's who's the best playmaker in the Sun Bowl offensively?
Oh, Jordan Faison. Yeah.
Oh, who was the best playmaker at wide receiver over the course of the season offensively, as far as big
I mean,
plays?
down the stretch, it was Jordan Faison. I mean,
Oh,
it
okay.
was. Yeah.
I mean, hey, I, you know, Tim Brown
Yeah.
wasn't the fastest, man. Tim Brown wasn't running away from anybody, but he made plays. Jerry Rice ran a 4.6 at the combine, but he made plays. I'm just saying, being a playmaker was all about speed. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some guys that wouldn't be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, speaking of speed, though, Sean, we want to talk about speed. We'll talk about that with the next guy. We got two more guys to get through, folks, and then we're gonna have a nice little conversation about what this means for Notre Dame. Michael Terry III, San Antonio, Texas, Alamo Heights, Sean. So here's you want to see your scouting bias? This is the scouting bias. When
Mm-hmm.
you see players or you see a profile first, sometimes you get assumptions in your minds, right? What my assumption would be 6'3", 210. He's
Mm-hmm.
probably a big physical dude that wins down the field with length and physicality. Cool. But then you put on the film, and my boy Michael Terry can run. Like he can run, Sean. And it's funny on the message board. someone was asking and was like, "Is he fast? Like I can't tell. Like he doesn't look like he's running that fast because he's a long strider, but he runs past people. Sean, he runs away from people. This kid is legitimately explosive, long speed at 6'3", 210 pounds. This kid could play safety. He could play rover. He could dang play wide receiver. There's no doubt this kid's an absolute stud. Michael Terry III out of Texas.
Any and everything that you need offensively on the football field, this young man can do it. He can play wildcat. He can throw from the wildcat. He literally has passing stats in the offense. He has rushing stats. He has receiving stats. Heck, he probably has special. He's probably punting. Dude might be place kicking. I mean, the kid is an all-around athlete. The film is amazing because it looks like they slowed down the shutter speed on the video, but yet still he's still blowing past guys. It's almost like he looks fast, but is he fast?
Yes.
It is absolutely amazing to watch his film, right? And then this is the kicker. I wouldn't be mad if he was a defensive back.
No. If he came to Notre Dame and played safety, I'd be like, cool.
Oh, cool.
We're good.
Absolutely. I'll take that. You're darn right. I'll take it.
Yep.
That's the type of athlete this kid is. And everybody wants him. So good. We're finally talking about somebody that's like top 50, right? Top 100 that everybody wants, because everybody has been waiting for us to talk about Notre Dame recruiting somebody that's like the second best athlete in the nation and ranked 62nd nationally. Well, here he is, Michael Terry III.
He's a really good player, man. And Notre Dame also, Sean, they've had increased impact in the state of Texas over the last couple of years. I mean, we talked about what they did in 2023, obviously, with Micah Bell and that group, right? But then you talk about in 2024, you're still able to go down and get a Kedron Young, and you still have your Leonard Moore, and you're still able to impact Texas. So, is it going to be a tough pool? Probably, but it's a pool you try to make because that kid, again, he was offered by. So far, he's been offered by Oregon, Texas, Texas A&M, Baylor, Notre Dame, Duke, Georgia Tech, Missouri. I'm just reading the Power 5 schools, by the way. Nebraska, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, Purdue, TCU, Texas Tech. A lot of great schools have offered this young man because he's special. Sean, I mean, like you said, if Chris O'Leary wants him, cool. If Mike Brown wants him, cool. Yeah, he's really good.
Heck, I wouldn't be mad if Dylan McCullough wanted him. I mean, go watch his film. He lines up in the backfield,
right,
as a running back.
Right. There was probably a time where he'd be like, "Is that kid Eric Dickerson?" Like, who knows? Like, I mean, he might be. Who knows, right? Because he had I think it was 110 rushes this past year for right around 1,000 yards, a little shy of 1,000 yards. Had another like 500 something receiving yards. There was like 20 something yards a catch. He had 30 something touchdowns this past year, Sean, and also played safety. So Michael Terry's pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Notre Dame needs to try to get him on campus because he's a high academic kid, which helps Notre Dame, obviously. Notre Dame has made him more of an impact in Texas. That helps Notre Dame, but you have to get him on campus to have a legitimate chance there. Last guy, Sean, someone that you probably are a little bit familiar with, I would assume, but Donovan Olugbode. I don't know if that's how you pronounce the name.
You have to go to his Instagram. On his Instagram page, he actually has a video where he announces his name, and that's where I got it from. So it's Donovan Olugbode. It's all about the tempo. It's all about the tempo. As long as you get the tempo right, Olugbode. There you go.
Olugbode. Donovan Olugbode. So he is out of IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. But Sean, he's not originally from Florida. He's an Illinois kid. An Illinois kid. He transferred to IMG before his junior year, but I'm told that he spends a whole lot of time still in Illinois. Any chance that they're off or they can get back home, he goes back up to Illinois. So this is an Illinois kid originally, a top 100 player by multiple platforms. Just got an Ohio State offer here recently as well, on top of the Notre Dame offer.
Yeah.
Sean, this kid is he's incredibly well-rounded, in my opinion. I watched him. I'm like, okay, you're 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds. You have really good body control. You have good hands. You have solid to good speed. You're pretty quick. Like, he just kind of checks a lot of boxes for me, man. I made a claim, and I want to hear if you agree with this or not. He might be the highest floor wide receiver that Notre Dame has offered of the last couple of days. Like, I just think that he at worst is just going to be a good wide receiver on the college level. I think there's a couple kids here, the Michael Terrys, right, that their upside is higher.
Right.
But Donovan, I'll say it one more time for me. I'll
Alubade.
Olubide.
It's Olugbode.
Olubide.
Olubade. That tempo,
Olubide.
as long as
Yes.
as long as you stay with that tempo, it's easier. And once you get outside of the tempo, it can mess with
Donovan
you.
Olubide, I
There you
believe,
go. Mhm.
might have the highest floor of any wide receiver we've talked about today because he just has a very good overall athletic profile, in my opinion.
Mhm. I agree. I absolutely agree. It's once again, your film matters, ladies and gentlemen. If you have a son that's putting together film, film matters. Second play of this guy's film and the third clip are the same play. One from behind the quarterback and one from the regular view. It's a one-handed catch where he literally has to twist his body in the middle of the air. So you see the body control, you see the big hands, and you see the ability to catch it and snag it with one hand and bring it down on a corner route. And it's like, yo, that gives you so much just in that one clip of the ability of this kid. They use him a lot in the slot. He's very productive at a program like IMG. You'll see long touchdowns against top talent like Ben Davis in the secondary where Mark Zachary played last year. So you're seeing him go against top talent and come up with big plays. He's not a fast kid, but somehow, some way, not being a fast kid, he's a playmaker. Who knew? You can be a playmaker without being fast. I think that's why everybody in the chat is kind of going against what was said. So his floor is probably the highest floor. I agree. Are there players that they're looking at that they've given offers that have a higher ceiling? Yes, but once again, outside of Elijah Burris, what have we seen? Production. Production. And that seems to be at the top of the list, right? So I'm very interested in seeing. It just seems like, regardless of measurables, production matters. Production matters, right? So if you were taking a swing at a diamond in the rough, per se, as people say,
Yep. Yep.
but and I think that would be what Elijah Burris, right? Diamond in the
Yep.
rough, kind of diamond in the rough, minus the production. Okay, that's a swing that you might take, but that's something that you might have to watch, and it bears watching. Maybe you bring him back out for the summer junior day, or you get him back out there and you get a chance to watch him run around and make plays and play with other kids.
Mhm.
But then on top of that, what do you do as far as the other kids in the class where you're looking at them and you have the production? So that, to
Right.
me, that's because I like a lot of these kids, but it's only so many you can take. Like, I really wish we could take all 8, take 4, and then store the other 4 and redshirt them, and then bring them
Oh,
up.
well,
But unfortunately,
Michael, you just bring Michael Terry in as a safety, man. Like, you can make that happen. You can make it happen. What's his name? Sean Terry can play nickel. Like, just throw him at nickel.
mhm,
Like, you'll be
mhm.
good. You'll be good. You can find spots for him. Right. I mean, obviously joking aside there, but yeah. I mean, it's a very talented board, and that's not even including, obviously, you are still pushing for Taylor, right? You are still pushing for Derek
Absolutely,
Meadows. You are still pushing,
absolutely.
you're at least talking to Dalen McCutcheon. I mean, those things are still happening. So this 8-man board that we're talking about today is merely an addition. It's an
That's
extension of
it.
wide receiver recruiting.
Mhm.
So, Sean, let's talk about this.
Would you like to be that offensive coordinator with Rayton Vines Bright coming in and Donovan Olugabade already down there?
I would. I wouldn't mind it. It would be a good situation that we're in. It would be a good situation we're in. But let's talk about now 8-man class.
Mhm.
Michael Terry, Sean Terry, David Oglugbale. I pronounced that incredibly wrong, I think. It's fine, though. We're all right. We're doing okay. You had, man, there's so many that I need to recount myself. Tanuk Hines, Raiden Vines Bright,
Mm-hmm.
Elijah Burris. I think did I just hit them all? I hit them all. Lex Cyrus is the last one. So, and Nasir Newkirk. Excuse me. So after we have broken down those 8 players, Sean, my question for you is there anything that we can say about Mike Brown in terms of what he is valuing to this board and what he's trying to bring more of to Notre Dame? Can we make any of those distinctions based upon some of these recent moves?
Production,
Yep.
playmaking after the catch, whether it's physical play and breaking tackles, or whether it's just being quick in space and making people miss. It is very evident that run after the catch is very important. And I don't think he's stuck. This is what I mean. And I think this is one of the things that makes Mike Mickens great. Mike Mickens looks for certain traits that he feels like his guys must have.
Yep.
And then he takes the responsibility as the coach that it's my job to improve upon that.
Right.
Mike Mickens sees what is the must have, whatever the must haves are for him. He sees it, he identifies it, and then he takes responsibility. What a novel idea as a coach to teach, develop, and get them to be the best players they can be.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And Mike Brown obviously has his must-haves: production, run after catch, and a lot of these guys, it's not a lot of body catchers.
Yep.
When you watch this film as well. That's on the smaller side of like things that I saw, but most of these guys are great catching the ball with their hands, great hands. But that's what jumped out to me. Now, does that mean, because this is nuanced, because when you come in and you see this many offers, is that Mike Brown saying this is something we do not have,
right,
in depth, that we need to have? Like, I had to ask myself, like, not the guys coming in, but the guys that were returning, who was great after the catch?
Yes. Yeah. That's my biggest thing, Sean. That was my biggest thing. And I love that you hit on that right there, because what's the thing that, because all these players are different, right? Sean Terry's 5'9", $170. Michael Terry's 6'3", 210. Nasir Newkirk 6'2", 185. We got a couple 6'1", 170 guys in there. Like, they're all different body types and different styles and different positions as well. We talked about some X's, talked about some Z's, talked about some slots. Talk about a Michael Terry who could probably play both outside spots. Nasir Newkirk who might be able to play both outside spots. I mean, a lot of different types, right? But what's one thing that most of them have in common? It's their ability to create some stuff after the ball's in their hand, right? I mean, every one of them, for the most part, every one of them can do that. I mean, Lex Cyrus is an after catch dynamo. Sean Terry does a lot of great things after the catch. Michael Terry, despite being 6'3", 210, and you wouldn't think that would be a strength, he does that, man. He creates some stuff after the catch. Nasir Newkirk, you see a bunch of the plays after the catch that really kind of pop to you. I think that board, for the most, the only player that I would say, like, I don't think Donovan Olugbele is a great after catch guy. I don't know if I would say, like, Raiden's Vines Bright's okay.
But he breaks a lot of tackles.
He does break
if you watch, he breaks. It's very hard for the first defender to bring Olugbele down when you watch his film. So he might not be great after the catch with speed and quickness. But he's going to get you extra yards with physicality and breaking tackles. So on top of production. So
even Tanuk Hines, Sean, even Tanuk Hines, he's not the same type of after catch guy as Sean Terry, because Sean Terry is more, jitterbug, great eyes in space, like that type of thing. Tanuk Hines breaks tackles though, and that's translatable to at the next level. I think he's going to create some stuff after catch as well.
Yeah. So look, that's what stood out to me. And for me, I love that. Because that signals to me that Mike Brown loves. Dude, you have coaches that can coach, that are good coaches. And then you have coaches that love what they do. It's just like teachers, man. Like, right, you can point to a teacher you had that you could tell they loved what they did.
I
And
was
as a
that
student,
teacher. I was
eh,
that teacher, Sean. I'm
well,
just
there
kidding.
you go. You probably were. But everyone probably has one or two teachers that they can point back to say, yo, I had good teachers throughout, elementary school, throughout high school, junior high school, but these one or two teachers stood out
Right.
because of these reasons. And he just strikes me as one of those guys at the position that just stands out, along with Mike Mickens and some other people on the staff. It's like, yo, you can tell they love it. They love the evaluation. They love going and finding the guys that no one else wants to put up as a 4-star, 5-star and say, I'm going to show you how good this
Right.
kid is. You don't think he's
Right.
good? Watch this. That is like something that I think we see in Mike Mickens. That I think we're waiting for the manifestation of it on the field, but there are some remnants there from an evaluation standpoint with Mike Brown that we see in these new offers. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see the profiles, the different profiles we're going to start to see recruiting wise from Notre Dame.
Yep. And I would say this, Sean, after catch is definitely something that has in common. I would also say for the most part, and different variations of it, but this group that was added, a lot of speed there, right? Just pure vertical speed. I mean, I would
Football speed.
say, yeah, football speed, no doubt.
Football
Because
speed.
I would look at it and say, Michael Terry can run, right? Sean Terry, I don't think he quite has a gear, but Nasir Newkirk can run. He can win down the field. Lex Cyrus can run. Elijah Burris can run pretty well. I think that he has a little bit of speed to him. And Raiden Vines Bright, I think, is a pretty good speed. Not great speed, but good speed. There's a lot of speed in that equation too for Notre Dame of the new offers. And yeah, man, I'm interested to see what the wide receiver class looks like ultimately, because the crazy part is that these wide receivers, a lot of different shapes and sizes, a whole lot of different play styles. There's a lot of different, I think, final results that we could see in this wide receiver group in 2025 because there's a lot of different styles to work with.
Let me ask you a question. This is just great. Man, I love this conversation about wide receivers today.
Yep.
Is it safe to say two of the most explosive passing offenses were Washington and Texas?
Yeah. Yep.
Totally different wide receiver profiles. Look at the wide receivers at Washington. Look at the wide receivers at Texas. You can tell what Kalen DeBoer likes. You can tell what Sark likes for his offense. Yep. Totally different profiles.
Sure.
Right? But based upon what we heard people say today, no one would ever think the profile of the Washington receivers would be playmakers. Rome Odunze is not a burner. He's not a burner. He's good speed for his size. He's not a burner. Polk is not a burner. Like, dude, they don't just have burners, but they have big physical receivers that are really good after the catch, that are really good in the screen game. They make you defend every blade of grass horizontally and vertically. And he recruits to what he likes to do. Right? So we get caught up on like, this dude is this fast. Dude, what does Mike Denbrock want to do? What does Mike Brown envision? What's the offense they eventually want to get to? Right? Because you had Neighbors, who was a fast, smaller receiver. Well, he's not small, but he was smaller than Thomas.
Yeah.
Smaller than Thomas, who was a bigger receiver. But
6'4".
both of them were able to thrive in Mike Denbrock's system. So this is not just about getting one type. Like, dude, get playmakers. Like, get big guys that can play, get smaller guys can play. I believe the younger kid, the sophomore, he had like 49 receptions behind Thomas and Neighbors. Number 4. Is number 4? What is his last name?
Behind Thomas and Neighbors? It wasn't Tracy, was it? I'm trying to remember who else on LSU caught a lot of passes. I know Tracy had a bunch of plays this year.
I think I know that was the greatness about their offense. They had 3 receivers over Lacey, the Lacey kid. I'm sorry.
Oh, Lacey is what I meant. I said Tracy. I meant Lacey.
Dude, Lacey
Kyron Lacey or whatever. Yeah.
7 touchdowns and 7 touchdowns out of 30 receptions. Like, dude. And he's the number 3. I'll take that. I'll take the number 3 receiver having 7 touchdowns at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No doubt. No
And you can
doubt.
say he's not as fast as Neighbors, and he's not as
No.
big as Thomas. He's probably in between,
Yep.
but he was productive. And next year would be his year.
Yeah. All different body types and styles. I would also say, I mean, I would even go back to the Cincinnati days with Mike Denbrock, Sean, with Desmond Ritter and those
Mm,
cats. They had 3 wide receivers that were very different, but were
mhm,
all very productive while he was with Mike Denbrock. One was Alec Pierce, who's 6'3", 210 plus, ran 4.38 or something like that, 4.39, a big physical kid that can run down the field. You had Tyler Scott, who is more of your explosive route runner. And you also had Trey Tucker, who was a 5'8", 5'9" jitterbug in space, more of a
mhm,
screen player. And they had those guys and they were able to make it work. It all worked together, right? They
mhm.
were able to make it cohesive, which was a big thing. So yeah,
Well,
I
you
think
look
Mike
at
Denbrock has to be a part of this conversation, obviously.
Sark. He loves fast thin receivers. Like
Yeah.
those are his types. Like
Adonai
you know,
Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. Yep,
Xavier
yep, yep.
Worthy. Those are his types for his offense, right? Because
Yep.
he wants to stretch the field. And he loves his smallest tight ends.
Yep.
To be able to work. Look, you can. That's the great thing. We talk about these young men and the similarities. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that they have these similarities as playmakers and being great with the ball after catch with different night and day measurables and night and day competition, it bodes well. Like you can't. There is no one. If Notre Dame took anyone out of the 8, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be sitting here upset about
Sure.
that tape.
Mm-hmm.
Are there some that I prefer over the others? Yes. But would I be upset like, oh man, I can't believe they took that kid? Heck no. And that's just the new offers. You know,
Yeah. Yep. It's going to be very interesting the rest of wide receiver recruiting, folks. As you can see, Notre Dame has put a lot of differentiated, diverse skill sets on the board for Notre Dame in the 2025 class. So we'll see how everything works out. Again, there could be a lot of
mhm.
different varieties and a lot of different combinations that could make sense for Notre Dame. But we're going to talk about some other offers here next, guys, because wide receivers aren't the only players that are being offered. We had 2 defensive linemen and a linebacker that I love that we're going to be
Yeah.
able to talk about here next. Before we go, like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Go to boards.irishbreakdown.com because I did a little bit of a film breakdown of one of these players before we even got on the show today. Sign up there, and we're going to talk the rest of the recruiting trail here next on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown podcast. So, Sean, Notre Dame has not just gotten wide receivers on board in over the last, because for people that don't know, the last 2 weeks so far has been the open period for Notre Dame, or for college football, I should say.
Mhm.
And Notre Dame has spent a whole lot of time traveling everywhere. All the coaches have been out and about, going all over the country. They've spent some time in Cali. They've been down in Florida. They've been in Georgia. They've been in the Midwest. They've been down in Texas. They've been everywhere. They've had their local days where they've been sticking in Illinois and Indiana. Like they've been Wisconsin. They've been everywhere so far the last 2 weeks. A part of the large amounts of wide receiver recruits that have been added to the board. Sean, we also had 3 other offers that were not wide receivers. And I want to break these players down individually, and we could really kind of get into the nitty-gritty of some film. I'm going to try to play film. Again, I know folks, hey, if the internet is a little wonky, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to show you all some film so you can see what we see potentially. Okay. So, Sean, Al Washington has been pretty active as far as offering kids over the last couple of days.
Yo, can
Okay.
I
So,
tip my cap to Al Washington?
of course, you can always do that. Sure.
Hey,
Yeah.
because I've been critical in certain situations, but the man he's putting in work. He's putting in work.
He's putting in work. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's a good way to say it, right? The 2025 defensive line class is obviously off to a great start. He did a really good job coaching this past year as well, getting the most out of guys like Howard Cross and Riley Mills and Javante Jean-Baptiste. So, yes, Al Washington is doing a very good job recently for Notre Dame. Let's talk about the top-ranked defensive lineman that he has offered over the last few days, Sean. His name is Ethan Utley.
Mm-hmm.
He's out of Nashville, Tennessee, Ensworth High School, listed between 6'3" and 6'4", 275 pounds. I'm going to play some film here as we talk about him a little bit. Again, we're not going to spend as much time just purely watching the film and breaking it down, but if you're listening to us live, I want you all to be able to see the player that we are talking about. So Ethan Utley, Sean, Tennessee kid, 6'3", 6'4", 275 pounds, rated by every platform as a 4-star recruit, rated as high as number 44 overall, the number 7 defensive lineman in the 2025 class, and number 2 player in the state of Tennessee by On3's ranking. He currently holds offers from Tennessee, Notre Dame, LSU, Florida, Texas, Texas A&M, as well as Auburn, Oklahoma, NC State, Kentucky, South Carolina, Georgia, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Purdue, Mississippi State, Cal, Cincinnati, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, and so on and so forth. So long offer list here, Sean. Interesting player because I mean, we'll talk about this with defensive line recruiting, I guess, here for a couple minutes, but Notre Dame doesn't have a ton of spots left, right? This seems to me maybe a little bit of over recruiting to a degree because we live in a world where guys decommits, where things change, evaluations change. And I think that this is just a situation, Sean, where they went down, Al Washington speaking, went down to the state of Tennessee, saw Ethan Utley in person and was like, I need to offer that kid. Kid's good, man. Kid's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see, 6'4", 275, plays defensive end for his high school now, but probably is going to be a guy that's going to eventually convert inside, would be my guess.
I think this is something that we can see that this Notre Dame staff under Marcus Freeman have learned valuable lessons from the previous recruiting cycles, that they're not going to get burned again. They had situations where they thought everything was sweet and they ended up with no cavities.
Yeah.
Right? We thought it was sweet. And they're not going to get caught with their pants down. We saw them with the new transfer quarterback. Okay, we brought a quarterback in, but we're going to go get some talent that he can throw to. We didn't do that the last cycle. We're not going to get caught in that situation again, especially from a depth standpoint, a youth standpoint in the wide receiver room. So they're learning as a staff as they go along. Like, don't make the same mistakes over again. And they're doing the same thing in recruiting. Why not? This have you seen, dude? You look at this film. Are you kidding me? You darn right. You recruit this kid.
Yep.
You have other teams and other kids in later classes have to see you recruiting top kids. It's nice to connect Notre Dame to Ethan Utley for the kids in the 26th class in the state of Tennessee. You're darn right. And he goes to Ensworth, which is a national power and a state power. You're darn right. Make the connections with the coaches. Get in on their future players. You're darn right. It's bigger than just going after this kid. You can say, well, they're getting in late. SEC schools are in on them. Tennessee, there are kids that played at Ensworth last year in the 24 class that went to Tennessee. Yeah, recruit this kid, right? Have the audacity as a staff. Yeah, we're going after the top kids. You have to. You have to. And I love the fact that Al Washington, once again, putting in the work. If he gets them, fine. If not, fight.
You won't get him if you don't try, right, Sean? You have zero chance if you don't try. 100%.
No. The best shooters shoot, right?
Yes.
The best shooters shoot. That's why they end up being the best shooters.
Sean, I don't know if I ever told you, but like when we used to play pickup basketball, I was the shooter, right? I used to tell people all the time, shoot or shoot, baby. Shoot or shoot.
That's
Just
right.
keep shooting. I'm going to keep shooting. And yeah, I mean, to your point, like what if, again, hypothetical speaking, but what if someone leaves the class where you're like, we need to now pivot somewhere, even if you're filled up? I mean, developing relationships with these types of kids, I think, is big time for Notre Dame, right? Because he is a
Mm-hmm.
high academic kid. He is a kid that, yes, probably ends up in staying down south, but at the end of the day, you never know that. I mean,
Yeah.
we would have made assumptions that, guys like Jaden Greathouse probably would have stayed in the South or in Texas, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would have made assumptions that Deuce Knight would want to just stay in the South and go. Some guys just built a little differently. Like, you have no idea if Ethan Utley is that guy until you start recruiting him. So you start building that relationship. That's what's going to tell if he can be that guy or if he is that guy. So I have no problem with Notre Dame over recruiting defensive line a little bit, because that's, again, you have to prepare yourself. I mean, because
Yeah.
anything could happen these days. Yes, you don't want decommitments to happen, but if they do, you have to be able to pivot to something else that's great. And this kid obviously has a lot of talents. 6'4", 275. He's going to be over 300 pounds pretty quickly, and he can move, man. He can really move for a guy his size.
Did you forecast him watching this film as a kid that you could possibly play odd man front, 4-man
Yes.
front, bring him off the edge? Oh man, see, these are chess pieces, bro. You see, we keep saying like who are going to be the chess pieces offensively and defensively for Notre Dame moving forward. You get a kid like this, he can be a chess piece because you want to be a multi-dimensional defense, right? That's what we keep hearing. Notre Dame wants to be able to do, diverse things defensively, and especially bring pressure.
Yep.
Well, these are the type of kids you recruit. They look, he's 275 right now. Even if he adds weight, I think he keeps that same quickness and athleticism. So whereas
Agreed.
you can go 3-man front, put your linebackers out there, or even in a nickel situation, and let him actually apply pressure from the outside at that
Yep.
size. You want him to play
Agreed.
big end, in a 4-man front, there you go. He can. If you want to go NASCAR, and let him go inside and let him be over one of the weaker, offensive linemen on the interior in a passing situation, go right ahead.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's said perfectly, Sean. He's a diverse player, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, immediately I look at him and say, you're going to be a 6'4", 300-pound kid who's going to be a 4-3 defensive tackle, a 3-tech. But if you're running a 3-man front, he could definitely do some of that stuff, man. Like, he could work some 4-4-I with the length he has, with the physicality he has. He could work from a 3. He could even work side and nose in some 4-man fronts at times as well. Like, this is a scheme diverse defensive lineman. I don't envision him staying on the edge in college, because I just think I look at his body and I'm just like, that kid's going to be a big kid, I think. Like, he's just going to be a pretty big kid. I don't see him staying on the edge, but man, he's talented, man.
But he
He's
could.
very, very talented
Like,
football player.
yo, I'm not saying this is who he is. Definitely from a measurable standpoint. But Stephon Tuitt wasn't about to stay on the outside. But anytime they went 3-man front, Stephon could go outside and was athletic enough to rush from the outside.
Yep. He you know who he so he reminds me a little bit of Devin Houston to a degree. Like, a little, like, just body type wise, I think he's a little bit like Devin. Obviously he's a higher rated player than what Devin was. I mean, even Devin was a top 150 kid by, I think, at least one service. So he was a pretty highly rated kid as well. But yeah, I think he is a perfect player in a modern system where you don't have to do mass substitutions to get from a 4-man front to a 3-man front. Like, that kid stays in. You're 3-4 defensive ends. He's a 4-3 defensive tackle. Like, there's a lot of things that he brings to the table, obviously. So we'll see what happens with Ethan Utley, but regardless, it's a really talented player who is a highly rated player. A player that is not as highly rated, Sean, this one's a very interesting one. Notre Dame was out recently in the state of Kentucky at Frankfort, Kentucky, Western Hills, and they offered a defensive end named Javion Campbell. And Sean, Javion Campbell is a basketball player. If you look on his profile, he literally lists power forward / defensive end, 6'6" power forward / defensive end. Now, he says that he's 6'6", 230. I am looking at his profile right now on 247 Sports that lists him at 6'5", 265. So there's a large range of how big this young man is. But he does not have an impressive offer list as of now. Right now, his offers are Notre Dame, Minnesota, Purdue, Cincinnati are the Power 5 schools that have offered him so far. But Let's pop on the film here, Sean, because he's a very interesting talent. I mean, this is a basketball player that I think is developing into a football player. He just had 14 and a half sacks as a junior, so it was pretty productive. I mean, you see, he lists here 6'5", 260, 14 and a half sacks in only 7.5 games, man. That's it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
You
It's
think?
not bad. Not bad.
Man,
Yeah. He's long, man. He's long. He's super long.
long and powerful, man. I still think his hands can get better.
Yes.
His hands technique can get better, which is going to make him even more powerful. But the fact that he's able to push the pocket and be explosive and get into the backfield as frequently as he does, pretty good competition that he goes up against. So, you know, when you're grading that and you're looking at him, you come away impressed. But once again, man, I love seeing Notre Dame on the defensive line go get guys that can give flexibility and versatility. It's like you'll see him inside, you see him rush from the outside, you've seen him drop in coverage. He's just a really good athlete. Just a really good athlete.
Yep. I'm interested to see how his body develops too, Sean, because I mean, let's obviously at 6'5", 260. He looks like he has a body that I could see staying on the edge because he's super long, but also a kid that, I mean, would I be shocked if he's like 290 plus and eventually he's kind of that hybrid player as well? Could he be a Jason Onye is a question. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, could he be that type of guy as far as like his body type is a inside player at 6'5" plus and 290 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark. I could see it. I don't know. I could see it.
I think one of the what did I miss the play I really like? It's one play, dude. I'm all about film production, man. And it's just, as a sequence of plays with this kid where you literally watch him go sideline to sideline. I think it's right in here. It's like I love to see defensive linemen prove that they could go forward and side to side, right? That's why they go through those drills at the combine with the big guys where they lay them on the
Yes.
ground and they get up and they go to the left, they
Yep.
go to the right, then they come forward and they go back. You want to be able to see them have hip flexion, like you say, and be able to sink your hips and immediately change direction. I'm very impressed by this
Yep.
young man because I think he has great change of direction with his measurables. But once again, a kid that's going to grow, what size is he going to become? But even when he puts on weight, I think he's going to keep that ability and
He can
that
move,
athletic
man.
ability and hip flexion. Yeah.
I haven't seen any basketball film, Sean, but I would love to see some basketball film, man, because I guarantee this
Oh,
kid's
great
pretty
feet.
good.
Great
Guarantee it.
feet. Great feet. Great feet. That's why I love
I know
watching
you
big
watched it.
dudes on the
I know you
basketball
watched
court.
it.
I love watching them in pick and roll. I forget offense. I want to see you play pick and roll defense. I want
Sure.
to see you switch and keep that little guy out of the lane. I love watching big football players that have the ability to do that. It tells me a lot. It tells me a lot.
Yep. I'm very interested to see if this kid blows up a little bit because, again, right now his offer list is not expansive. He's got a couple Midwestern
Mhm.
schools that are looking at him. Not really any big time schools outside of Notre Dame, though. So we'll see if that increases. I'm sure it will at some point, but uh, it'll obviously to be determined on what the demand is for a guy like a Javion Campbell. But he is offered. He is on a part of the board now for Notre Dame. So we'll see, Sean. Either way, I'm okay, especially with Notre Dame adding side kids, because what happens if you lose someone in the class, let's say, and you have a open and you were way ahead of the curve on Javion Campbell. At that point, now he's a top 150 kid, top 100 kid, and you were one of his first offers. That matters. That definitely matters to
Mhm.
a kid like that, I would say. Definitely matters.
Man, I totally agree. Totally agree. And that's what we look. Isn't this what lessons learned? This is what Notre Dame has learned. The best thing for us is to stay in front of the curve, get early commits
Yep.
so we can lock in to the kids we're going to have to fight for. And then not just get stuck fighting for those kids, but continue to recruit other top kids so we can have contingencies. Then we just talked about it, whether it's recruiting or NFL draft and boards. When you put together a board, you're not putting together, these are the guys we want, let's go get them. No, you have to
Mhm.
play it out. You have to have contingencies. I think one of the greatest lessons they've learned is that Notre Dame has learned we have to be honest about where we stand with kids. We have to constantly evaluate and be honest about where we stand with this kid in recruiting, regardless of whether or not we're trying to get him to commit or whether or not he's committed. If we start to feel anything change, then we need to start looking at contingencies because, you get stuck in a Peyton Bowen situation, right? Where that's the situation where we both look at, both of us say, man, we picked up on that months ago. I would say Double R, you were one of the first people that were like, no, I don't know about this situation. Before any of the official visits started, this was like during the summer. You were like one of the first people that were like, yeah, I talked to this kid and I just, no, man, I don't know. And what ended up happening?
There were some signs that I think I should have hit on a little bit earlier in the process, but regardless, you were hopeful, man. I was hopeful that everything was going to work out. Notre Dame felt fine with where they were. It was just, the Payne Bone situation was not great. It wasn't a great situation.
But this staff learns. I think they learned from the Dante situation, the Keon situation, the Peyton Bowen situation.
Yep.
I think they learned from the Brandon Hillman situation. I definitely think they learned from the Justin Scott situation, right? And I think the way you see this, if they put in the necessary work, there's no reason this class shouldn't be top 5. Yeah, when it's all said and done.
Agreed. There's also have numbers. I mean, we talked about it the other day. Like, I don't think it's unreasonable to think Notre Dame gets like 28 guys in this class. I mean, they can. It's going to be a really big class, man. Really, really big class. So,
and of course, what is the ultimate? If they win on the field, if they go out and win on the field this year,
it'll be easy. Easy. Yep, it'll be easier. Sean, let's talk about the last new offer, man. This is the one I've been waiting for. Here it is. Ready? We're talking about Rabun Gap, Georgia, linebacker, 2025, Antoine Delorier, who I had a chance. I know Sean had a chance to talk to a little back and forth. I had a chance to talk to him on the phone last night as well. Sean, this is a fascinating football player, man. Fascinating. Why? 0-star recruit right now, man. Has only been playing football in the United States for 1 year. And that 1 year was pretty good, by the way. 76 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 2 sacks. Pretty good. Sean, why has he only been playing in the States for 1 year?
Drum roll.
He's from Canada.
He's from Canada.
Yep. And he's been playing. He had been playing Canadian football since he was 10 years old. So he's not new to the game of football, but this was his first year playing in the United States, and he went down to the state of Georgia to play this year and was dominant. 6'1", 225 pounds. He does not have a single star to his name, Sean, but you know what he does have? He's got offers from Notre Dame, North Carolina, Ole Miss, Auburn, Miami, Duke, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas A&M, Tennessee, UCF, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Maryland, and NC State. And did not have a single one of those until this season, until the season started. Not have a single one. Well, I'm going to put the film on as we talk about him, Sean. I'm going to put the film on because I'll be honest with y'all. Sometimes when I watch the film, Sean, immediately, I don't see it at first, right? You don't see it early. This kid's good, man. This kid's really good.
This is a grown man.
This is a grown man.
Already. Yep. It's a grown man. Like some people have him at 230. Yeah. Some people say 220. Some people say 230. He's a biggin, as they say in the South. He's a biggin. He can step on the field right now physically in college and play. Oh, dude.
Sean, he's 225, 230, to your point. This kid, though, I think there's going to be a couple misnomers about him because you're going to see, guys, he's a thumper, man. Incredible play strength and physicality getting downhill. Incredible. But there's going to be a misnomer about this young man. One, people are going to talk about the length, and I don't think he has long arms. So fine, that's a conversation. The other thing, though, is that people are going to do what they did with Bodie Cahoon last year and be like, is this kid fast? Right? The answer is yes. This kid can run. Verified. 4.61 in the 40, 225 plus pounds. He also has a 39-inch vert and a 9.11 broad jump, Sean. This is an athlete. Very, very explosive downhill, but you can see him as he works to the sideline. This kid can run, man. This kid can run as well.
What did I tell you? I said I watched the first 3 plays and I stopped. I didn't need to see anything else.
Yep.
First 3 highlights, I'm like, yep, I'm good. This is a dude. Can you imagine him playing and behind or with dudes in front of him? Which I'm gonna be honest. When I say dudes, I'm not talking about trying to say anything negative about Rodney Mills and Howard Cross. I think we know from a recruiting standpoint that Notre Dame is trying to improve the interior of the defensive line with size. Right? Because what do they have to do? They have to improve against the run per game to become a national championship defense. They're right there, but the inability to just flat out stop the run. You think about how teams really got big plays against Notre Dame. Travion Henderson, big run. Maffa, big run. Duke went to the run game to get back in the game because they were struggling in the pass game against Notre Dame. Teams were able to go to the run game to be able to establish something against Notre Dame. Because as great as Riley Mills and Howard Cross are, they're not those big plug guys that are going to reset the line of scrimmage. Right? They're going to get in the gaps, pressure the quarterback. They're great players, man. Great players. But when you start getting Sean Stavigliano Jr., you start getting a Davion Dixon, kids that can come in, what they're trying to build Devin Houston up to be. Guys are going to be at 300, athletic, set the line of scrimmage, and then let the talent that you have at linebacker give them the ability to go play. Go play. You don't have to worry about this guy getting to the second level. Run. Sideline to sideline to make plays. You get a guy like that behind defensive linemen like that, where he can just be instinctive as he is, shoot the gaps, and make plays. Man, and he's a sure tackler. That's what I loved about his film. We see a lot of guys that get, deliver a blow with their shoulder. No, this dude is wrapping you up.
He's wrapping you up,
getting you
Sean.
hard, getting you down.
He's wrapping you up, and he's a player that I think people have probably heard me say this in the chat before, but he comes to balance as a tackler, which means he's not his feet planted, good base, delivers a punishing blow because he has his feet underneath of him. He has his lower body underneath of him, and he's able to gain that power from the ground up. That's why this kid's such a heavy hitter. That's why he has a lot of force behind him, because he comes to balance as a tackler. He is physical, man. And I don't even care that Antoine Delorier is maybe a little bit of shorter armed player. Because why, Sean? Because he can run, man. He can run, and he's explosive. This is a more physically put together and faster version of JD Bertrand. That's what this is. Isn't that what we've all been asking for? Like, JD's a good player, but you need to upgrade that position, right? Well, that kid's exactly what you need, man. He's good. And a couple updates on him. One, I talked to him last night, Sean. He's talking about visiting in March for the first time for Notre Dame because it's a little tough. He's not with his family in the United States. His family's still up in Canada, so he's by himself down in Georgia in Raven Gap. But he's talking about visiting in March, and then he's also already talking about maybe taking an official visit again in June to Notre Dame. Wow. So there's quick interest there, man. Max Bulla was the one that obviously had extended the offer to him. They had spent 30 to 35 minutes just having a deep conversation about football, who they each are as people, and just kind of come into an initial relationship type of perspective. And one of my first things, Sean, is if Notre Dame pushes for this kid, I think they'll have a great chance because one of the first things when I asked him, "What are you looking for in a school? What's appealing to you?" One of the big things that Antoine said was, me and my family need a high academic school. We need that. We need it. We value education very much, and we need a big time academic institution. So Notre Dame's going to be about it, man. They're going to be in this one if they choose to pursue him. But obviously, they're already trying to get him to campus. He's planning a couple of trips already. And I really like Antoine Delorier. Sean, I know some people are going to disagree with this because you have a chance with Marco Jones. You have a chance with Christian Jones. You have a chance with Noah McHale. Look, you still have a couple spots open, even outside of Antoine Delorier. You could still go out for a Marco Jones and a couple other guys. I would take Antoine Delorier right now. Wouldn't even think about it. Right now. We'll take him today. If he called Max Bullitt today and was like, "Hey, coach, you made such an impression on me. I'm going to come and visit and stuff, but like, I want to commit right now." I would take him. Not saying Notre Dame would, but I would personally take him. I think he's a pretty dang special football player, man. I think he's pretty special.
Absolutely agree. And I'm going to reiterate what we talked about earlier, man. This is about putting together a board. And taking a kid like this does not mean you don't want the top kids. That's not what that means.
Because I think this kid's going to be a top kid. I think he's going to be a top kid. I would not be shocked if he's a top 100 to 180 to 150 kid. Yep.
But this is the thing. He might end up being the third highest ranked linebacker you get. And if that's the case, that means you're in a pretty good position in the linebacker room. He could be. He might end up being the second highest. But this is the point, Brian. This is the point.
Yep.
You open the door by saying, "Yo, he is JD Bertrand, bigger, right?
More explosive, yeah.
Yep. JD Bertrand and Jack Kaiser saved Notre Dame." Sean, what do you mean by that? We all know what the linebacking recruiting was prior to the arrival of Marcus Freeman as a defensive coordinator.
Yep.
And what he had in the room was JD Bertrand and Jack Kaiser. And what they gave Notre Dame in production, we've all been critical of both at times, especially when it comes scraping over the top, angles to tackles, all of that.
Missed tackles, yeah.
Missed tackles, fine. Tackling in space, great. But most of us would sit here and say, we're happy with what JD Bertrand, who's going to the Senior Bowl, by the way.
Yep.
And Jack Kaiser, who's returning. We're pretty happy with what they've given us.
PFF just put out a graphic yesterday, Sean, that claims that Jack Kaiser was one of the like 5 or 6 guys that were like, "Who's the best linebacker coming back?" I was like, "Oh man, all right."
Right. And I saw your little dig saying, "Well, the class really isn't that good, honestly." But
yes, it's not. It's not. But that's beside the point. Yes.
That's beside the point. Kudos to Jack Kaiser. But my point is, this is why you recruit not only the top guys, but you go to get guys that give you a high floor. Jack Kaiser and JD Bertrand were high floor players, man. High floor players. So if you miss on top guys or injuries happen or the recruiting just goes to the wayside for whatever reason, these are the guys you have to lean on. And if that's going to be who you have to lean on in tough situations, if Antoine Delorier, while people are talking about he's not ranked, he's not even ranked, he's from Canada. If that's the guy.
Neither was DeMello Jones when they offered him last year, and he ended up being a top 100 kid going to Georgia.
100 kid going to Georgia. This is what I'm talking about. Like, dude, like Notre Dame seems to know what they're doing, and they seem to know and have a great idea of how they need to recruit. To improve and get better. They know.
Sean, I would just like to read that offer list one more time, and then we'll get into the mailbag. Antoine Delorier, who was not on anyone's radar before this season, since his junior year started, he has now collected offers and a lot this offseason so far from North Carolina, Ole Miss, Auburn, Duke, Notre Dame, Miami, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas A&M, UCF, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Maryland, and NC State. 17 offers, Sean, for a kid that's been playing several months in the United States. Like, he hasn't even been here a calendar year yet. He hasn't even been here a full year. Hasn't been in the States a full year. This kid's going to continue to blow up. I guarantee you see a lot more offers come his way. I think this kid's going to end up being a top 100 to 150 football player.
Yeah.
That's what I see. Yes, not the longest arms in the world. Yes, he's still improving as far as trusting his eyes, all those things. But that kid's
Yo,
explosive and he is physical and he has range. I would take
can,
that kid all day.
can I read you something that plays into what we're talking about? And Notre
Yep.
Dame, Marcus Freeman finally having the staff that he wants, emphasis
Yep.
on HE,
Yes.
that he wants, and how that's
Yep.
going to play into recruiting and why we're seeing more offensive wide receivers, diversity of wide receivers, going after Ethan Utley, going because he has in place everything he wants, and now everything flows down here, right? Now you see the lessons learned, and now you see, yo, Chris O'Leary offering the kid in Texas that might be a wide receiver, right? You have other guys that I'm not even your position coach that's going to be recruiting you, but I'm officially offering you. It's like,
Right.
yo, you start to see this. Jason McKee, who played fullback for Chicago Bears, just
Mm-hmm.
tweeted this out. He said, when I came in as a rookie in 2002 with the Philadelphia Eagles, this was my coaching staff. Listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
You'll love this because you're big on this. Head coach
Yep.
Andy Reid,
Mm-hmm.
OC Brad Childress, defensive coordinator Jim Johnson, special teams coach John Harbaugh,
It's
quarterback
crazy, man.
coach Pat Shermer, running back coach Ted Williams, wide receiver coach David Culley, former head coach of the Texans, also offensive line coach Juan Castillo, defensive line coach Tommy Brasher, linebacker coach Ron Rivera, defensive back coach Leslie Frazier, safety coach Steve Spagnuolo, defensive quality control Sean McDermott,
It's pretty good.
and the assistant special teams coach Dave Toll. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And you wonder why the Eagles had success? I mean,
Yeah.
and coaching matters. You've already saw, most of us felt like we saw improvement in the urgency and the way the wide receivers played in the Sun Bowl.
Absolutely. Yeah.
From just like minimal practices on the arrival of Mike Brown.
Yep.
Expect to see that continue, right?
Yep.
Al Golden. If they were that good in the second year, Al Golden's defense, how good do you think they're going to be in the third year, returning the players that they're returning?
Yep.
Look, man, be excited about Notre Dame, the prospects on the field, and definitely about the prospects of the 25 class and 26 classes moving forward. Like, because this thing is trending beautifully in the
Yep.
right direction.
Yeah, man. I'm excited about a couple of these offers. There's no doubt Antoine Delorier is a guy that I broke down at boards.irishbreakdown.com a little bit further. If you all guys want to go watch that, it's a premium exclusive just for the people that are on the message board. So make sure to go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. We're getting the mailbag next, folks. Keep throwing in those questions. We might get a special guest here in a few minutes, by the way, because we're running over a little bit. Make sure to hit that like button, though, for us. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Hit that notification bell. And on any and all of your favorite podcast platforms, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Mailbag next here on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown podcast.
I went to the Warriors. He's speaking on the go.
All right, Sean. So we are going to get into the mailbag here as I just get a couple things done on the back end. So mailbag time. Let's get some questions here. First one we will go to. Sean, I don't know how much research you've done on this. I think I would just like to talk about prioritization on this question, but Iden Benami started us off and said, is there a kid you guys like in the 2025 class that no one at Notre Dame is talking about right now that you'd like to see them go after, under the radar kid, maybe like Elijah Burris, even though we have offered already? Sean, I would like to rephrase this because I'm not, I mean, like, we don't have a full transparency as far as like who Notre Dame is talking to all the time, who they're evaluating, those types of things. I would just say that let's talk about a couple players that maybe are on the Notre Dame board that we would maybe like if Notre Dame would take a deeper look at, or at least maybe value a little bit heavier or push for. One for me, Sean, we've talked about wide receivers a lot. I would still like Notre Dame to recruit Cooper Perry out of Arizona, man. Scottsdale.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that kid's so good, but Notre Dame just doesn't seem to be as high, I guess, as what I am on a Cooper Perry, for instance. I would also say that it's been a little bit of an interesting one, Sean, because Notre Dame's recruiting Jarquez Carter, the defensive tackle out of Newberry, Florida. But I just don't think that they're going to end up pushing as hard for Jarquez Carter to potentially be in the class. So I just think those are a couple guys that I look at and say, like, I wish Notre Dame would maybe prioritize a little bit more. But as of today, it doesn't seem like it's quite as prioritizing as maybe I would personally do. I don't know.
I agree with that. Yeah, we don't even have to stay on that. You said it perfectly. You know, I never really was a big Cooper Perry fan, but yeah, I think all of these new offers are under the radar, honestly. I mean,
yep.
I'm not so sure that Notre Dame would have recruited. How many of these kids would they have recruited if the same coaches were here? I'm not sure.
I think they would have eventually added Raiden Vines Bright. I think the two guys that they would have eventually added that I think Notre Dame was at least looking at before the coaching change happened was Raiden Vines Bright and Donovan. You say the last name for me again because I forgot how to pronounce it. Alugbadide.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think Donovan Alugbadide and Raiden Vine Bright would probably be the two if I had to guess on who they would be talking to or pushing for. So yeah, that would have been added to the board, I should say. Maybe not pushing for, but would have been added to the board. All right. So let's get this one, Sean. Here's an overarching question from Sexy Man. I always love to say Sexy Man out loud. It's my favorite thing. Sexy Man says, will our offense with Mike Denbrock finally be allowed to open up? Yes, I know it won't be LSU, but I would like to see a nice, healthy 40-plus points per game, a few 1,000-yard wide receivers, and a 1,000-yard running back.
You know what? I don't know. I don't need that. Let's take this season, right? I don't need a 1,000-yard receiver. I don't. Because I'm looking at the way 1,000-yard running back at Notre Dame is like taking a breath every day. Like, dude, that Kyron Williams, Aldrich Estimate, heck, Logan Diggs and Aldrich Estimate both were right there at the cusp sharing time. Right? So Jeremiah Love, if he gets 900, and then you have Jadarian Price at 900, like, we've had 1,000-yard running backs forever. So that CJ Prosise came from playing wide receiver at the beginning of the year, ended up as a 1,000-yard running back. I mean, I don't want to say that's the easy part because the game of football is not easy, but yeah, that's the easy part. The 40 points per game, I don't care about that either. Score 30 against the best competition. Score 30 against Duke. Score 30 against Louisville. Score 30 against Ohio State. That's what I care about. All these regular season numbers and putting up 40, 50 against Navy and Northern Illinois. I don't care, man. At this point, I don't care about that. That proves nothing to me. When you walk on the field, you're better than Northern Illinois. When you walk on the field, you're better than Navy. When you walk on the field, you're better than Virginia. Like, dude, that's not even debatable. You should put up 30, 40 points. You should average 40 points in a season. What are you doing against Florida State, Louisville, and USC this year? What are you doing? What are you doing? What's the offense doing? Are you putting up 30 points? Are you averaging 35 points against them? Are you going to put up 30 in this playoff game?
Right.
That's where I get impressed. Like putting up 36. Yeah, they broke records this year. What did they do against Ohio State? What did they do against Duke? Plenty of opportunities to put points on the board. Didn't get it done. What did they do against Louisville? That's the next proving ground for me offensively. Look, stats, for all of that, I don't even need it. I don't need it. And it would be nice to have a Jaden Daniels, Thomas Neighbors combination at Notre Dame.
Sure.
And then Logan Diggs, I think, had the highest yard per rush in the nation. If I'm not mistaken, at like 6 point something. I would love to have that offensively in Notre Dame. Love it.
Yeah. Yep.
I would much rather have balance, great defense. Because last I checked, LSU lost 4 games with all of that,
Mm-hmm.
averaging 40 plus. What did they do in the biggest games offensively?
Right.
Probably didn't
Yep.
reach the same level. That's for me, I think that's greatness, right? You think about the greatest, and this is not an individual game, but great teams have the ability to, and players in the biggest moments, to not just keep the same production, but like elevate it. Like Michael Jordan's playoff scoring average was 4 to 5 points higher than his regular season average. Like Larry Bird was the same way. Like that's greatness. And that's the greatness I want to see in this Notre Dame offense. Like, man, average 35 in the regular season, then go put up 40 back to back 40-point games in the playoffs.
Yep.
That for me
Yep.
is like that next step. And look, do I think they have 1,000? Chris Mitchell could be 1,000-yard receiver.
Possible.
It's possible.
It's possible.
But
well, Sean, I would say, like, again, we saw Notre Dame do much better as far as beating up the inferior opponents offensively this past year.
mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day,
And that was
they're only going to be judged. Yeah, it was a step forward in that regard.
Yes.
It's a step forward in that regard. But you have to show that you were able to be sustainable against the best teams in Europe. Again, like, you're not going to average 40 points a game against the top 5 teams, 5 to 10 teams in the country, right? But you need to be able to outscore them. You need to be able to show up and have an offensive attack. And so, yes, you need to be able to sustain that and be able to have offensive success against some of the best in the country. Sean, Antoine Johnson's in the chat with us now, our resident Michigan fan. I haven't seen Antoine in a little bit, man. He must have been partying the last couple weeks, I suppose, and enjoying the national championship for Michigan. What's up, Antoine, though? What's up? We still love
Antoine, just a piece of intel for you. You have a young man that's a first-round pick probably next year on the defensive line.
Mason Graham? Or are you talking about Kenneth Grant?
Just don't assume that he's staying. Because I have very good intel. He was getting phone calls 2 days after the national championship game from programs.
Oh, I'm not surprised by that. I'm sure all those kids are getting calls.
And if it's not a matter, it has nothing to do with Sharon Moore. If that defensive line coach doesn't stay, we know Jesse Minter's probably gone.
Are you talking about Mike Elston? Talking about Mike Elston? Uh-oh.
Hey, if the defensive line coach doesn't stay and some of the other coaches, yeah, man, there's some good deals on the table, my brother. And they are waiting.
Oh, there's going to be a lot of good deals.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm all for it. You know why? Because everything is fair game. This is the culture the NCAA created when they made scholarships 1-year renewals. It's a 1-year contract. He brought you a national championship. Now go get the money. Everybody on Michigan's team, go get the money. If you get a good offer, go get the money.
Antoine said they already got a contingency plan. He says, man, they already got a contingency plan.
That's fine. All I'm saying is that's a first-round pick. I don't know too many contingencies for first-round picks.
I guess another first-round pick. I don't know if they got another one waiting around.
I mean, maybe they have one in the chamber, but I'm just saying.
I love Jason always in the chat, Sean. Wait, there's tampering? Yes, there's been tampering for 60 years.
Yeah. You darn right. Because the college football streets were talking. They knew Jim Harbaugh was gone. Everybody in the college football streets knew he was leaving.
Yep.
It wasn't a secret.
Yeah. Dude, if it's been a secret, their
ear isn't to the streets. That's
Oh gosh. All right, we had an interesting one here, Sean. It's a little NFL draft-centric question, man. ND Estimate Trucking LLC says, thoughts on Cooper DeJean being the top-rated cornerback in this year's draft according to PFF. So that's the Iowa cornerback. Look, my top corner in the 2024 NFL draft is Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. That's my guy this year. I love Nate Wiggins. But I also do really like Cooper DeJean, Sean. He's a universally diverse player, man. He can play outside corner. He could play nickel. He could play safety. And so that's why I think there's high value for him as in the estimate trucking LLC. He's injured, so I don't know if he's going to end up testing. I'm sure he probably won't. But he was expected, Sean, at 6'2", 207 pounds to run high 4.3s, 4.4 flat, somewhere in that ballpark, test really well. He's played multiple positions. He's a great tackler. So I'm not surprised. I don't know if you've seen Cooper DeJean much, but he's a really good player.
No, I watch a lot of Big Ten football, so I've definitely seen Cooper DeJean. And Wiggins, I like. But see, this is defensive backs, in my opinion, have gotten to, because I remember I was critical of the Tyree Stevenson pick by the Bears. Very critical. Just off the medicals, right? But by the end of the season, I was like, But he was allowed to come in. He already had a 1 in Jalen Johnson. So he could just come in and learn, not having to go up against the top guys. And because of the system they play, which is more off man, which plays to his skill set. So for me, Cooper DeJean, if he goes to the right team, I think eventually is going to be a really good player. But if a team that's going to ask him, if a team that wants to play bump and run all the time gets him, I think that's more, because Nate Wiggins has played a lot more off man, but he played some bump and run as well at Clemson.
Yeah.
But it's about systems, right? Especially the defensive back system. Like, what are you playing off man? Unless you're just a Witherspoon that I felt like could do whatever you want him to play.
I love that.
As a defensive back, let him play. But before both of those guys, would you say it's a thin year at defensive back?
Safety's not a good year. Corner's deep, though. I like corner a lot. Corner's a really good class this year. Nate Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion Arnold, Kalen King. Like there's a lot of good ones, man. Quinyon Mitchell, man, out of Toledo. He's a baller, man. Love Quinyon.
He's I think Mel Kiper had him as his first defensive back. Coming off the board in his draft.
He's good, brother. He's really good. He's gonna be at the Senior Bowl as well. So I'm excited to see a couple of those cats, man. They're gonna be very good. They're gonna be very, very good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go now. I'm gonna answer a couple more. I gotta get out in a couple minutes here, but we had where was one? Someone asked me about my jersey. I'm just wanna pop this one up. So IL_Irish82 says, "What Phillies jersey is Ryan rocking today?" Sean, I got a Bryce Harper jersey on today, man. It was a Christmas present, so I got the old school powder blue, baby. You know, it's nice. I like it.
If you're gonna rock a jersey, rock a great. That's the way I feel. Did you happen to see the video that went viral between Jamel Hill and her husband?
No, I did not.
She exposed the fact Jamel Hill's a 49ers fan. Oh. She actually had a Jimmy Garoppolo jersey. Out of all the San Francisco jerseys that you can purchase, you got a Jimmy G jersey. I applaud you, man. I applaud you.
It must be because he's handsome. That's probably it, right? His play's not too handsome, but he's a handsome guy. So we had a couple of super chats here, Sean. We had Charlie Weiss's last belt loop with a super chat. Thank you so much, sir. Hey guys, any word on Jamie French or long shot? Thank you, IB. Hey man, I think it's a long shot. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, Charlie. Will Notre Dame try? I'm positive they will at least have a conversation, right? I know that they had a very good relationship with Jamie French before he chose Alabama. Mm-hmm. I think that the odds would be not in Notre Dame's favor to land him, but I'm sure that they will have some efforts to try to get Jamie French, and I'm sure that Deuce Knight will also have some efforts to bring Deuce White. Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't envision it happen, Charlie, but I'm sure they will try. I'm sure they will try.
What the heck is going on with today's show, man? I jump in and you guys are talking about Bryce Harper and Jamel Hill. I gotta come in and save the day, man.
And Jimmy Garoppolo being handsome.
Oh, and Jimmy Garoppolo's handsome. He
is handsome. He's a handsome guy. I mean, we can admit that to ourselves.
Okay, if Brian, yes, I give you one opportunity to customize one Notre Dame jersey. You can go through all of the players in Notre Dame history. You tell me you're gonna get an Ian Book jersey?
Why would I get it? What I don't understand.
That's my point. Like, out of all the great players that have played for the 49ers as a fan.
So you're saying Ian Book is handsome? Is that what you're saying?
No, it wasn't about him being handsome.
Well, you know the answer to that. You know my answer to that one. It'd be number 25 or number 9. It'd be one of those two. It'd be Rocket or Tony Rice. But yes. Yeah. Yeah. But I feel the same way about Bryce Harper jerseys, but I'm not the biggest Bryce Harper fan in the world. But, it is what it is. But yeah, it'd be 9 or 25. It'd be somebody from 88 or 89. You know that.
Probably. Yeah.
That. And if it wasn't going to be one of those, if I say, okay, I have to pick one from the last 20 years, it'd be number 10 for obvious reasons. Yeah. So, Angela and I's first dog was named. It was Brady. So, you know where that one is. So,
even if you went back to getting an Alan Pinkett with the gold, they used to have.
Oh, yeah. Bold number. Was he 20, right? Was 20. He number 20?
Yeah.
Yeah. Be a good one. Be a good one. It wouldn't be Ian Book. It wouldn't be Pat Dillingham. It wouldn't be.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I get what you're saying about Jimmy G. Like I don't understand why. Yeah. I mean, look, he did lead him to what 3 NFC Championship games, right? Something like that.
Yeah. So if you were a younger fan, I would understand. If you're like a teenager and you grew up with him being the quarterback, fine. Jamel Hill's she's not a spring chicken.
No, she's definitely not a spring chicken.
No, that you've grown up with Steve Young and Joe Montana. Come on now. Jerry Rice, like quite possibly the greatest player ever in football.
Sure.
And that's the jersey you invest in.
And even like if you just look at the last, I mean, Patrick Willis, Nick Bosa, Debo Samuel. I mean, like there's plenty. Christian McCaffrey. I mean, there's plenty of Trent Williams. I mean, give me something besides Jimmy G. So yeah, I get it. So yeah, it's a good show going on. I'm just stepping in. Obviously, I'm not actually saving the show. Ryan had a very important appointment he had to get to today, and so he asked if I could finish the show with you, Sean. So
that means it's going to be like another 2 hours with us.
I hope not, but you're probably not wrong. You're probably not wrong. Wait till the RTCF shows come back, Sean. It's going to be crazy. It's like buckle up on Saturday, folks, because it's me and Sean doing a show, and we're talking about Notre Dame, recruiting, and college football. This might be an all-dayer. Get ready for it. All right, let's get back on track. By the way, Iden Benami, no, I can't tell you what the entire recruiting schedule is going to be from now until July. That's a much better message board question where we can kind of put it into paper, but that's not really because it's off and on, quiet, dead, open. It's just it's not an easy thing to answer. I could look it up, but that's a better message board question, to be honest with you. So we'll go here, Sean.
Ryan, can you talk about? I'm not Ryan. He's not Ryan, but hey, we'll try. Can you talk about how you currently view the 2025 linebacker board as far as how the staff ranks the kids offered, and how many Notre Dame may take, and how you'd like to see the board shake out? Well, actually, Brian just talked about this a little bit, but you can go. I'll let you go ahead and answer that. Give your opinion because we talked about it a little bit.
Well, I mean, for me, I like the board where it is. I'm always, Sean, I'm always a fan of continue to expand the board until there's no reason to do so. People are, why are you worried that they're not going to get some of the receivers they like? They're offering all these new players. And I'm like, no, they're offering new players at receiver because they don't have anybody committed yet, even if they do have some guys leaning, but there's just really good football players out there that they're just now getting on. So, I don't care what the reason is. I'm glad Elijah Burris got offered. I'm glad that Lex Cyrus got offered. I don't care why. I'm just glad that they got offered. And then obviously Michael Terry and some other guys. But, the linebacker board is already huge. I mean, if you look at the offers, I already have, I think, over 20 offers out already. The thing for me is they got to close. That's going to be the key. They've got one kid on the board already, Josiah Kia. The staff is very high on him. Now, whether or not, we could discuss whether they should have taken him this early. That just depends. I don't know that I've seen enough film to have a strong opinion on that yet, Sean. But he's got some tools, and obviously they like the family connection there and what he brings to the table. But when I look at the linebacker board, Sean, I don't necessarily know that I have any issues about expanding it, which wasn't part of the question. I think now it comes down to you've expanded it. You went and offered the kid yesterday that Ryan actually did an interview with. We'll have coming out here soon. The kid from Rabin Gap, who's originally a French Canadian. So he's going to have an accent that's going to be unique, but another Canadian player. But between, Brett Clatterball, the Antoine Desailliers is my best guess at that. Between those guys, between Christian Jones, Marco Jones, Noah McHale, Anthony Saka, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. I mean, to me, really, that's the group you've got to be landing players from at this point in time. And that's really what it comes down to. I think it's not so much the staff ranks them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's more so there's this group of A players. And we've talked about this before, Michael. I think you and I have even talked about this. But there's this group of A players and then kind of B players and then kind of C players. And the A players are the guys that are no-brainers. They're your top guys. B guys are guys that you may like. You may take one from that group early on and then hold the others for maybe A players. And then if you miss out on some A players, you go after some B players. It's more like that. I'm not saying Notre Dame has A, B, and C, but it's like that. It's groups. These are guys that we take no matter what. And you fill up on those as best you can. And I think that group of players that I just mentioned are mainly the A guys. There's some other guys that the staff likes. They're just like they like Gavin Nix a lot, but that's unlikely. There's some other players that they like that are just, guys that just aren't real legitimate candidates for Notre Dame. But it's a closing time is really what it boils down to, Sean, and you need to get 2 more guys. I don't know who that's going to be, but the way I look at it is my hope, how I'd like to see the board shake out. My hope, Sean, is that because of how well they've recruited linebacker in recent years, that they swing for the fences filling out this class. Swing for the fences with Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng and Noah McHale and Marco Jones and Christian Jones and guys like that. Like, swing for the fences. There's no need to settle right now. I know this staff loves to fill up early, but you've recruited well enough at linebacker in this particular instance to where you don't have to settle on anybody right now just to get your numbers. Shoot for the stars. And if you think Marco Jones is an elite difference maker, then go for him. If you think Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng is that guy, if you think Christian Jones is that guy, Noah McHale's that guy, then take your time because you're in a position now. Because what people have to understand, like somebody on the message board asked me this the other day, Sean, are you worried about the numbers of linebacker? They only have like eight scholarship guys. I'm like, no, because they spend half the game in a 2 linebacker defense. Yeah. And so this isn't, 10 years ago where you needed, to even have a 3 deep, you needed 9. I mean, right now you're kind of a 2.5 deep linebacker team. You know what I mean? Like you're going to spend a big chunk of the game in a 2 linebacker defense. So I think the numbers are good. The impact talent is good. I mean, Drake Bowen, Jaden Alsbury, Preston Zinner in the 2 years ago, this past year, Kingston and Bodie Cahoon and Rezak and Jalen Sneed still has Jalen Sneed technically has 3 years of eligibility left.
Yep.
Because he redshirted in 2022. So you don't need to fill up right now. You got Josiah Kia, you got Dominic Kulak as a hybrid guy. Shoot for the moon. I just listed 6 or 7 guys. Give me 2 of those. And you could throw Brett Clatterball in that conversation as well. Give me 2 of those guys, and I'm happy, very, very happy. Start straying outside of that group, unless it's a guy that's of equal quality, then I'm going to start thinking maybe they're settling a little bit if they fill up this summer. But if they got to take some of those guys in the fall because they've missed out on their top guys, that's fine. Yeah. But that's the thing for me is I want to see if they're willing to take their time a little bit more so and really shoot for the stars with these last couple linebacker fits, Sean.
I think the only thing I will add to that, because you said it perfectly, is that they have positioned themselves. We talked about this right before you came on, man. The blessing of knowing your floor and what you want to set. And if Josiah Kia is the floor of this linebacker class, then you're going to have a pretty good linebacker class. When you look at it, and he's the floor of the class, you're pretty good. Because if you look in a normal recruiting cycle at Notre Dame at the position, I don't think Jack Kaiser and J.D. Bertrand are at the top of the class. But they would be the floor of the classes. And based upon what they've given you at Notre Dame, if that's what you're going to get from the floor of your position room, that type of production, then you're doing something right from an evaluation and recruiting standpoint. And I'm with you. Swing for the fences now. Stay in the fight, because with guys like Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, it's going to be a fight to the finish. Stay in it. If you want them, go get them. Stay in it. But it's like putting together any board, whether it's recruiting or NFL draft. You have to have contingencies.
Right.
And this is just Notre Dame making sure that they have contingencies and honestly evaluating themselves with each player as time goes on. Like, where are we realistically at with this young man, that young man? So we know when to move on. We've continued to build the board, and now we can go after this kid. We'll learn a lot, Brian, with the early visits in March.
Yep.
That's when things will start to filter out, and we'll start to learn the serious contenders, if you want to use that,
Right.
and some of the guys that they might, move on from a little bit.
Yeah, and because around March we should start hearing more and more about who's setting official visits for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
That's when that'll start coming out. So like right now, everybody's excited about Nathaniel Wusu Boateng. That's great. They could not have done a better job this weekend, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, kudos to the staff for knocking it out of the park. But the key is going to be getting them back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's going to be the key. So when we start hearing about those, then you start feeling better. But you've got a great board, Sean. I mean, just close on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is what Marcus Freeman's supposed to be about, right? I mean, there's close on it, and be willing to take your time. That's going to be a big key.
Yep.
For me. Good question, Michael.
NC Notre Dame fan. I just want to say I thank IB and LL for Indy coverage. Y'all do a great job being in North Carolina, and I'm not being around a lot of Indy fans. Y'all keep me up to date. I never talked to so many Indy fans before. And NC Notre Dame fan, we appreciate you.
We still love you. We love you, NC Notre Dame fan, even though you had a bad take yesterday. He said he thinks Bobby Bowden, Tom Osborne, and Jimmy Johnson are all better than Nick Saban. So I had to push back a little bit on that one.
Give me those three again.
Bobby Bowden, Tom Osborne, and Jimmy Johnson. The argument for Jimmy was because he included NFL, which I don't.
No. Jimmy, the only pushback I would say is that, and I can't. I was going to argue for Jimmy Johnson, but I can't.
He only won one title. He was only in Miami for 5 years. Well, the premise is that they never got blown out in a championship game.
The Penn State losses. The Penn State loss in the Fiesta Bowl was bad.
Not only that, his first or second year, they got beat. They were number 2 at the end of the year and lost to Tennessee in the Sugar Bowl 35-7.
Yeah.
Bobby Bowden lost to Florida 52-20. So I like to bust his chops a little bit about that one, but I just don't think he likes Nick Saban, which I am very sympathetic for. I think especially Bobby Bowden was a very lovable figure if you weren't a Florida or a Miami fan.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick Saban's a little bit gruff and not an overly lovable figure. Where I would give credit to Bobby Bowden and Tom Osborne is longevity. I mean, we were talking about this the other day with Bo Schembechler. We were talking about overrated coaches, and I said I know some people that think Bo Schembechler's overrated. The argument being he never won a title and he had a terrible record in the Rose Bowls, and I was like, that's a fair criticism. But number one, I've never heard anyone put Bo Schembechler outside of Michigan fans on the same level as like Newt Rockne, Bear Bryant. Guys like that, but there's something to be said for a guy that just was consistently great for 20 years, even though he never won the ultimate prize. And to get to that many Rose Bowls, he had to win a lot of Big Ten championships.
Yeah,
for the time when the Big Ten was pretty good. So I do like. I'm not going to say you're like Pete Rose, for example. Pete Rose is a Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest hitters ever, but you can't give him the title of the greatest. Well, he has more hits than anybody else. That's a longevity award. That's not you know what I mean? Like he's barely over a career 300 hitter. It's a longevity award, whereas maybe a guy was like Ted Williams doesn't have as many career at bats and opportunity and all that, but he was statistically to me, a far greater hitter. You have to look at the dominance relative to longevity and then balance those two out. Some coaches have both. I mean, Bobby Bowden and Tom Osborne have both. I mean, they, to me, would rank higher than Bo Schembechler because they coached a long time, had tons of success for a long time, but also won championships. Tom Osborne won 2 and Bobby Bowden won 2.
Yeah, Osborne.
He won 2. He won back-to-back.
Right.
95.
I was about to ask if, no, you're right, because he finally got over the hump in the Orange Bowl. Okay.
The thing that kind of hurt Tom Osborne is he had some great teams in the 80s.
Yeah.
That just always went up against like another, like the Miami game with Turner Gill at quarterback where they lost 31-30 and had the 2-point conversion. So they just could never quite get over the hump. And then that 94-95 back-to-back, that got them over the hump. Those were phenomenal teams. no doubt about it. But
I
yeah,
loved it because they were smacking Steve
yeah.
Spurrier. That's what I
Oh
love.
my gosh, that was.
Oh,
I went back and watched that the other day, because I remember being a blow, but it was actually a relatively competitive
closer
game
game. Yeah, come
for
back
like
to a
half
certain
the
point.
game.
Yeah.
But it was close because Nebraska wasn't scoring. Florida was still having trouble like moving the ball consistently, but Nebraska really put it on them in the second half. Just it was a lot like the Notre Dame game, and a couple years before.
Mm-hmm.
People forget Notre Dame was actually losing, I think, late third, early fourth against Florida in the Sugar
Yeah.
Bowl, and then just in the fourth quarter, just pounded Florida. And that's kind of what Nebraska did. As the game wore on, the physicality just wore them out, and they couldn't handle the physicality. And that was the same thing. But I watched that this summer, Sean, and I was like, I don't remember this game being this competitive early on.
It happened real fast. It got
Yeah,
out of hand really fast.
really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Escalated
blame,
quickly,
hey,
as the great Ron Burgundy would say.
I think, dude, that game, Lawrence Phillips had a couple of runs in that game where I felt like that dude was gonna be a Hall of Famer. I was
Yeah.
just like, yo, this.
Well, he could have been a great back if he wasn't just an awful, horrible human being.
Yeah.
But yeah, that touchdown run Tommy Frazier had where he bounced off like
Oh,
literally
we
the
bounced up 3
entire
tacklers.
Florida
Yeah.
defense. It was pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. All right.
How many analysts should I'm sorry. Thank you, Andre Tonsil, for the question. How many analysts should power football teams use? How will this change help Notre Dame to become a national champion? We talked about a little bit about this from a recruiting standpoint today, Brian, because we talked about the importance of whether it's NFL or college, the importance of analysts, because added analysts means added relationships.
Mhm.
And even in recruiting, you can't expect all of your position coaches to find players, right? It takes analysts, and then those analysts have scouts that give them suggestions that allow them to become aware of kids, and they pass film along and things of nature. So you're creating a network, right? A network of information when it comes to recruiting, a network of information when it comes to ingenuity and offense, defense, technology, and how you can improve the program overall. So, you can never have too much information. Of course, you need to learn how to disseminate that information and figure out how to best apply it to what you're trying to do, which is up to the head coach. But ultimately, you build a staff and you get analysts to make the job easier for everyone else, and assist. So I don't know if that's because I know Nick Saban had a lot of analysts on his staff, a lot. So I don't see anything wrong with having, a staff that might reach to 20 to 30.
Yeah.
Nick Saban had like 50. It was some crazy number.
So to me, Sean, I kind of look at it a little bit differently when I think analyst. I think that's a little bit different for me than just the overall support staff type of situation. You know what I mean? And to me, I think every phase of the game should have at least 2 analysts,
Mhm.
and that includes special teams. But then offense and defense should have at least 4, and then recruiting should have 2 to 3. Just analysts. This doesn't include like Dre Brown. I don't include as an analyst. I view him more as essentially Chad's right hand man. You can call him whatever you want to call him, but I'm more referring to like you said, people that are advanced scouting, and every analyst has to have a unique role. I need some analysts that maybe if I'd like to have at least 4 on offense, for example, and I have like at least 1 or 2 guys working on advanced scouting. And you can break it down different ways. One guy can maybe just be doing data collection. The other guy can maybe be doing player, personnel evaluations. And then the guy that's doing the personnel evaluations to me also is like making little notes of like, hey, if this guy gets in the portal, we'd like to look at him, and then kind of pass that along type of thing. And then you want to have a guy that's, to me, a self-scout guy that's always constantly looking at what you're doing. And then it'd be nice to have at least one analyst that is a former coach that's helping you with your day-to-day. I mean, he's like basically a non on the field, but just a position coach, to where he may be in the film room with you guys. And I'd like to have 2 of those guys, but they all kind of play a role, but guys that are just, hey, I'm helping you put the game plan together. And obviously a lot of this comes from, Andre, the question that we have down here from somebody that says, from Jason Smith, says, how do we feel about the new analysts? And obviously I reported today what Football Scoop had reported, which is that Notre Dame was trying to bring in Trent Miles back as an analyst senior analyst on offense. And I think it's a great hire. I mean, this is what we've been begging Notre Dame to do. Bring back some former head coach, some older guy with a good track record that can just kind of help. Doesn't need to coach a position. He's just there breaking down film, self-scouting, helping you put game plans together. And this is a guy that spent the last 2 years with Mike Denbrock at LSU, and a guy that was a head football coach at the Power Five, or the FBS level for 9 years, right? A guy that coached with Mike Denbrock for a year at Stanford, 3 years at Notre Dame, and 3 years at Washington. There's obviously clearly some sort of relationship there, and he's someone that he trusts. And so you get a 60-year-old older coach that's been around doing this for a while. He was with the Eagles for 5 years, was part of the Eagles staff that won the Super Bowl recently as an analyst. That's a great hire to me. Guys like that are valuable. He's not the name. He's not the splashy name as if like they brought a David Cutcliffe back, which I would love to bring back David Cutcliffe as well. But this is a guy that can do a lot of different things for you. And to me, a guy like him, he's helping me break down film for the upcoming game, getting ready for the upcoming game. I wouldn't have him doing like advanced scouting, and he may do some self-scouting as well, but like there's so much value in having those kind of guys, Sean. So much value in having those kind of guys. And to me, to really be doing it at an elite level, you need minimum four. And then each guy has certain specific tasks. You may have 2 guys on each task. That's even better. But even then, they need to know who's doing what. So if you have 2 guys doing advanced scouting, one guy's doing run game breakdowns and formation breakdowns, the other guy's doing coverage breakdowns and blitzing breakdowns. I mean, they're working on certain things together. I think those things are valuable, and Notre Dame is starting to really step up their game. If you look at Jared Parker, when he took the head job at Troy, he took a bunch of Notre Dame's analysts with him, and made them full-time coaches. You know what I mean? So like these are guys like that. I believe he took the guy that came from Old Dominion, I believe, who was the offensive coordinator, O-line coach at Old Dominion. Notre Dame hired him to be the O-line or be an analyst this past year, and then Jared Parker took him with them. So there's certainly some openings, by the way. Yeah. But you're replacing him with, this is a proven veteran coach. And I've said in the past, like, Ty's staff did a pretty good job with fundamentals. That's something I've always said. They were a pretty fundamentally sound team. They just had no talent, and they had zero creativity at all when it came to putting the game plans and stuff together. But as far as just, teaching X's and O's or fundamentals, how to line up and how to do that, I gave them a ton of credit for the job that for the receivers that Charlie got the production out of, because Charlie brought the scheme, but those guys were taught how to play the position by Trent Miles. So to me, I think this is a great, if you can make this happen, this would be a great addition to the staff. No, this is what we've been begging for, right? This kind of veteran, been around a while, really knows the game, smart football coach kind of guy. I love it. I think it's a really smart hire. And clearly Mike Denbrock trusts him. Otherwise he wouldn't have, he wouldn't have brought him over to Notre Dame. Like maybe Brian Kelly made him work with Trent Miles the last 2 years. And then Mike Denbrock leaves, and it's like, okay, whatever. But the fact that Mike Denbrock brought him with him tells me that that's not what it was. It wasn't Brian Kelly placing him and hiring a guy, and you have to work with him. Yeah. It's like this is a guy that he had been with for 7 years in the past and is now with them again, and he's following him to Notre Dame. So there's clearly a relationship there. That's someone that Mike Denbrock values, and it's important for your offensive coordinator to work with guys he values. And this is why I think Mike Denbrock's going to make a smooth transition. This factors into it because you now have 3 people for sure on the offensive staff that have worked with Mike Denbrock before. Yeah. Because you already have Gino Guidugli and Mike Brown, and now you add Trent Miles to the mix. So you now have 3 people that are going to be involved with your day-to-day that have worked with him. And I think that is that can't be overlooked at all, right? I mean, that's a very, very important piece to this whole thing. And Deland McCullough and Mike Denbrock are going to get along just fine. You know what I mean? Like fine. And I would assume that, Joe Rudolph will transition pretty well also. But having those guys that I don't have to explain to Mike Brown what I want. He worked with me for 3 years at Cincinnati. He was my receivers coach for 3 years at Cincinnati. I don't need to explain to him what I need or what I want. Gino Guidugli is my quarterback's coach for actually longer than that. I think 4 years. I don't need to explain to him my day-to-day. He already knows right? Now we'll make things specific to Notre Dame, obviously, but they know the expectation, and that helps make a really smooth transition.
And that kind of sounds like what we hear, right, bro? I'm sure we hear, dude, you've been with me this long, you don't know what I want?
Right.
I,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure other people in the chat probably like, do I really have to say it?
Exactly. Exactly. We did have a super chat here from Frank G, and unfortunately, this was for Ryan, and we weren't able to get to it. But I'll go ahead and we'll read it anyway, just because we appreciate the super chat.
Ryan, why do we never bring up St. Joe's when mentioning the North Jersey Powers? Literally, 2 St. Joe's grads were 2 of the most important indie players this year in Cross and Estime. LOL, as always, keep up the great work, fellas. Yeah, Ryan was talking about the difference. We were talking about geographical biases when it comes to sports, recruiting, things of that nature. And he was saying North Jersey had the top programs, top Catholic schools, South Jersey, not so much. So that goes to what Frank G was talking about. And St. Joe's does deserve love. It's a great program. Definitely blessed from Notre Dame with big time talents like Howard Cross and Audric Estime. So yeah, they deserve love. They deserve love.
Sure.
Maybe that was just a little bias on Ryan's part, because we were talking about that. Like, even in film evaluation, recruiting, we all have preferences, we all have biases, and we have to kind of fight through those biases to be able to be fair,
right,
as we evaluate film and evaluate kids. So
well, I mean, there's so many good programs in Northern Jersey. I mean, you can't name them all every time you talk about it. I mean, if we're being honest, yes, St. Joe has given Notre Dame some good players, but St. Joe, and that's not where John Olmsted went. John Olmsted went to a different St. Joe, I believe. But you can't name every program every time. And in this, I mean, Don Bosco's just more of a name program. I mean, it just is. I mean, yeah, they've produced 2 pretty good players, but St. Peter's Prep has produced a lot of guys as well. Although St. Peter's Prep is really struggling right now. I think they went like 1-9 this year or something like that. And so there's just you can't name them all. Bergen Catholic obviously is a program that's done. I mean, it's a big time program. So I'll ask him about that. I wonder if there's something to that. But yeah, there's just so many good programs up there. I mean, like Seton Hall Prep is a school that I mean, we recruited Seton Hall Prep when I was at Muhlenberg. We used to recruit that league hard when I was at Muhlenberg, just because we're just Allentown, we're north of Philly. I mean, all those are hop and a skip, to get those kids. We actually, I don't know if it was more, but we had, I'd say, close to half our roster was from Jersey, even though we were in Pennsylvania, because we were a private school, so it didn't matter in state, out of state. But man, it's like we're foolish to not try to tap into that talent in New Jersey.
And that is what we see all the time in recruiting, man. You see these powers, but then you love to see, a Sean Terry from Ironton that most people have never heard of. Like, yo, where's Ironton in Ohio? Like, I have to ask. And it's like, oh, okay. Because, it's not a national power in Ohio, but it's a program that is built up to the point they're getting talented players. And now they're getting attention. You saw Notre Dame there. Then you saw Lincoln Riley there this week, for a couple of their players. So this is the way of the land, man. Of course, when you don't hear a kid from a national power, you question whether or not, you come to question like, oh, how good is he? The competition that he plays against. But it's pretty par for the course, man.
I have another super chat from Michael Mahoney. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael, for the super chat. Chance Coach Golden stays Irish.
Everything I've heard is that he plans to stay at Notre Dame next year. I mean, look, I'll say it again. Is there a chance he could leave for the NFL? There's always going to be that chance. But from my understanding is, as of right now, and this has changed over the last year. A year ago, it was pretty much like he's one more year and he's gone. But I don't know what it was about the relationship between him and Coach Freeman and his relationship at Notre Dame and just with the players. I just think over the last year, it's really evolved. And there's much more of I will only leave if it's the right job, more so than just, okay, I'm looking to kind of go. So again, I'm not telling you he's not going to leave, but I don't think he's out there just somebody hire me, as a D coordinator. I think it'd be for the right job. And the right jobs for him is, from what I'm told, is limited. There's not a lot of them. because he likes it here, and Notre Dame is taking care of him. And I don't know that he's signed the extension yet. I don't believe that he has signed his extension yet, but it's a substantial offer. And Notre Dame's going to have 2 very highly paid coordinators next year if he ends up signing that extension. But, look, there's a chance he could leave, but as we go, as every day goes by, it just increases a little by little by little that he stays. And I think the odds right now are pretty solid that he stays. But I don't want to say, oh yeah, he's coming back, because there are jobs still kind of coming open that I think he might consider. And it's more so, it's not like, hey, I want to coach with the Bengals or I want to coach with the Lions. It's more about, I respect that guy, and if he wanted me to work with him, I would work with him. I would want to work with him, type of thing, right? So it's much more that than, hey, I'm from Penn State, I want to coach my alma mater or something like that, or I'm a Notre Dame guy, I want to coach in Notre Dame. It's more about relationships. I value this guy. Like if the D coordinator for the Bengals would have got hired as a head coach, I'd have got nervous about Golden leaving.
Yeah.
I'd have got real nervous. He didn't. And he's probably not going to. From the latest rumors are that he's not really a candidate for either the Commanders and Seahawks.
Well, he's on the list here in Chicago. Yeah. I can confirm.
Oh, really? For the head coach
job,
or with the D coordinator job? Who's on the list? Golden?
Golden. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's on the list, but I don't know that that's necessarily a job that he would
take. I literally gave a PSA to tell him to stay as far as away as he can.
Right. And that's the thing is, like, I don't think it's like they may reach out to him, and if he's smart and his agent's smart, you use that interest to get more from Notre Dame. Yeah, I mean, that's business. That's how it works. But I don't know that that's a job that he would necessarily take.
Man, please. You don't want any parts of that.
He's on a lot of people's radar. Man. I just don't think there's a lot of jobs on his radar.
No.
Is more where I'm coming from.
Do you think just a moment of transparency from the time he arrived and what his thoughts were, right? Because when he came to Notre Dame, he probably had it played out in his mind like, okay.
This is a stepping stone from what I'm told. He always viewed it as a stepping stone. And Notre Dame knew that and was kind of okay with that.
I think the program, once again, his first impression of Marcus Freeman, that he was very open about in his introductory press conference, like, yo, this dude is really impressive. And then I think the kids, man, I just think working with Notre Dame's a special place.
And he views that. He views it that way. He does.
Yeah. And to get to work with these kids that are special kids, I think he values that, and it's kind of changed and softened his heart a little bit. Like, you know what? I don't really need to go anywhere. Honestly.
Something else. You mentioned the Marcus Freeman piece of it too, because that's always going to be a concern for anybody that's hired as a D coordinator in Notre Dame. It's like the head coach is a defensive guy that was considered one of the better D coordinators in the game. Is he just going to be like telling me to do what to do all the time, and I'm running his defense? Mm-hmm. No, there's philosophies that Marcus Freeman wants. But he hires people that believe, like this. Do you think so-and-so will run what Marcus Freeman wants him to run? He won't be hired if he doesn't. Like, so if a guy gets hired, you understand that there's a level of we're on the same page philosophically when it comes to running a football team. Now I'm going to give him the freedom to kind of go do it the way he wants to do it. And so what I'm told that Al Golden and Marcus Freeman's relationship is, yes, Al Golden was hired with the thought of this is what I want from my defense philosophically. It matched up well, which is why Al Golden was hired. But that Marcus Freeman is a resource, not someone who is dictating to Al Golden what to do. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that factored into his original, like, hey, I just am going to go back to college, get my foot in the game, be a coordinator, and just do what I'm going to do. But then that you're like, hey, this is a really good football mind in Marcus Freeman. He has a really good vision. We're simpatico in a lot of areas, but he doesn't dictate to me every single day. He lets me coach. And I think that's something that's also helped with Al Golden too, is like, I got this head coach who's a great resource, but he's not in my ear every day, looking over my shoulder every single day, like the former head coach did with the offense. It's not like that. And I think that's kind of been good for Al Golden too, is because, like, dude, this is your Marcus Freeman's always going to have he's going to always ultimately be in control of the defense from the standpoint of making sure the people that are hired do what he wants as far as philosophically. But when they get here, it's your jobs to run the defense. Mm-hmm. And, as long as things are, and so he's stepped in sometimes, as he should. That's what all head coach should do. but it's like, hey, let's think about this. Let's do this. Let's make some adjustments here. But it's still then, okay, now go do it. And I think that's worked out as well. So again, I'm not saying Al Golden's a lifer at Notre Dame, but I think he is going to be a lot more picky moving forward about where they are. And I think they found a niche for him recruiting wise, Sean. I think they know he's not a grinder. He's not going to be doing the work every day. So how can we utilize him effectively? Number one, put a great product on the field. Key number one. Okay. Number two, be that closer, whether it's in homes, on campus visits, be that closer. Because, Freeman will do the day-to-day. Chad does the day-to-day. Max Bull is very involved, all those type of things. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. So I think that relationship has been sound. Now, again, Michael, I'm not promising you he's not going anywhere. I'm just telling you that, unless the right job comes along, my understanding is he plans on being back next year. So.
Raymond Harden, thank you for the super chat. Ask NC fan about his Caleb Downs take. This is funny. This has been ongoing throughout the chat the entire show.
Okay. What did I miss?
Caleb Downs is overrated because our guy Antoine is a resident Michigan fan, and Archer was in here talking about getting Caleb Downs and the Ohio State defense, and a lot of people were like, "Oh man, he's overrated." It's like I would have loved to take him at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'd have to disagree with that, and I'll just leave it there. That's an interesting take. Very interesting take.
Yeah.
So here's another. Speaking of NC Notre Dame fan, where can I get IB and LL gear next time I go to a Notre Dame game? I want to wear some IB or LL gear, not or. You can buy both. You can always find the Irish Breakdown store is always in the link to this show. Sean, I believe you guys have a link to your store on your Lucky Lefty channel as well, correct?
Lucky Lefty and luckyleftypod.com. Matter of fact, we're launching new stuff next week.
Okay. And then if you're at boards, for irishbreakdown.com, ours is ibstore.irishbreakdown.com. So we have lots of hats, shirts, hoodies, all types of things. And for people that have asked about wanting to give donations or just giving money support, we do have a donation option on there that you can just give a donation. But we have IB mug, IB blanket, IB flag, all that good stuff. So you can get that, you can get this, all that type of good stuff. Gap closers gear, IB Nation gear, all types of stuff. So you definitely check that out at ibstore.irishbreakdown.com. Appreciate that, man, very much.
Andre Thompson, thank you again for another mailbag. How much influence does Coach Denbrock have over recruiting on the offensive side of the ball?
Tons. I mean, he's ultimately the offensive coordinator. He's going to be the one that's going to say, hey, this is what we're looking for. I mean, that's the reality of it. Hey, I want a dual threat quarterback. Now go find me the best one, and he's going to play a role in it. So, I mean, if you have an offensive coordinator that doesn't have a vision for what he wants to bring in personnel-wise, that's not somebody you want to hire.
No.
Now you could get away with maybe a guy that's not a great recruiter because of like Notre Dame's in a unique situation that they weren't in with Brian Kelly. Like Brian Kelly's recruiting would have been better during his tenure if he had someone like Chad Bowden the whole time. Let's just be honest about that. Chad would have been able to land a few more guys, but the combination of your head coach is such a great recruiter. That's not even a shot at Brian Kelly. It's just,
no. It is not a shot at Brian Kelly. Yeah. I know who it's a little bit of a pew towards, but
I really didn't even mean it to be a shot towards anybody. I just referring to like if you had someone like him, because like Chad is responsible for landing kids. I mean, let's be honest. You guys interview these kids. He's the number one reason some of these kids end up picking Notre Dame, not because of I want to play for Chad, but like he's the one that sells everything. And then your job as an assistant coach is like just don't screw it up. I've done all this. Don't screw it up, right? But when you have that plus the staff he has, which is growing, plus a head coach like Marcus Freeman, you can get away with a coordinator not being a great recruiter, which is why I don't hammer Al Golden as much now for not recruiting as I used to, because his recruiting hasn't really changed. He's not all of a sudden a great recruiter, but it's just kind of like they found a way to make it work because the head coach is a great recruiter. You've got Chad. Mickens does what he does. O'Leary's coming along. Al Washington's developing, getting more comfortable at selling the Notre Dame vision and his success of what he's been able to do. So you can get away with it. But, he at least needs to be able to say, this is what I want. Now go get it for me. But with Denbrock, not only does he have a vision for what he wants, he's a really good recruiter himself.
Yeah.
Who's coached quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends, and offensive line in his career. So he's one of those guys that has kind of done. And if you really go back and look at Mike Denbrock's resume, I believe, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe he was also a defensive coordinator at one point in his career. Yes, he was Brian Kelly's defensive coordinator back at Grand Valley State for about 3 years. He was his OC for 4 years and then became his DC for 2 years. And, so this is a guy that's coached on both sides of the ball. And, he knows what he wants. But he's also someone, even though he's a little older, that's I'm going to go out and make it happen. Because I've said this before, Mike Denbrock's like 59 going on 35. You know what I mean? Like if you ever meet him, Sean, I don't know if you had a chance to meet Mike Denbrock.
I have not heard a lot of great things about
him. He's got that personality. Like, he's you wouldn't think he's as old as, obviously as you get older, you look older, but like he just, the way he talks, the way he engages, just, he's not your typical 60-year-old guy. You can relate to him really well. He's got a lot of character, he wears hat backwards, not for any other way. That's just who he is. You know what I mean? Like it's just, put his hat on backwards because I'm throwing the football around. You know what I mean? And just, he's a different kind of cat, but he's a good recruiter. But he'll certainly have a vision. So yes, he'll have a lot of influence on. And that's why I say when people talk about, Mike Brown's reassessing the receiver board, I'm like, Mike Brown's certainly playing a role in this, but so's Mike Denbrock. Like this is a staff is what we feel we need to add more of to our roster. And if you look at a lot of the new guys, they're dynamic guys. I mean, they're looking for guys that either are dynamic route runners, dynamic with the ball in their hands. Like there's not a lot of 6'6", 4'6" guys with great catch radii. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, we've got those. We want some difference makers. Yeah. And it's been a theme for what they're looking for. There's no doubt about it.
And you see his offense was able to do it with 3 different types. And we pointed this out. You look at their offense, they had 3 receivers productive, right? Neighbors, Lacey, Thomas. Thomas and Neighbors are going in the first round of the draft. Totally different profiles, totally different measurables, totally different games. And yet and still he found a way to make them productive.
Mm-hmm.
Neighbors is your fast guy. Shorter. Thomas is the big physical, just get in his area with his catch radius. And then you had Lacey, that's a tweener between them both, and he was able, in 30 catches, he had 7 touchdowns. So Mike Denbrock has the ability, even going back to his first tenure in Notre Dame, to get the best out of the talent he has, But playmakers is the thing with the offense. I love it, man. I love it. Everything they're putting around him to support him bodes very well for the offense.
It's actually good that I was muted because my computer started playing all of a sudden. So I was like, what's going on? All right. So we got some more questions here that we can get to, Sean. Let's go to another one from NC Notre Dame. Actually, yeah, there we go.
What about Jamie French and Isaiah Mosey? Indy needs to be on them like they were on Great House and Cam Williams. They are gap closers.
Couple things. Number one, yes, they would love Jamie French, but you can't land a guy that doesn't have the same interest level in you. Isaiah Mosey's a very good player, but I don't know that he is heads and shoulders above other guys that they're on, to be honest with you. I don't think that he is. I think he's a very good player. But they also tried to get him on campus and he wouldn't come. So they're on plenty of talented players. That's not an issue at all. Like, look, right, receiver right now, Sean, I'm good with the board. Just close it out. Close out the guys that you have on the board.
I agree.
That's all you need to do.
I agree. And lessons learned. This staff has learned, look, pick up very early whether or not kids are interested. We're not about to waste energy.
Mm-hmm.
But these kids are showing that they're not interested.
Mm-hmm.
And we can go find another great player.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Good question.
Jim Halloran, thank you for the mailbag. Brian, is Indy recruiting any aliens? Had to ask for Tommy Gunn. So, All of this came from. Remember, I told you about the biases earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
All this came from the fact that before we did the show today, Malik did a film breakdown of Antoine Delorier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And was like, "Yeah, man, love this kid. It's just yo." And I purposely didn't. I waited to say first year playing in Georgia, the kids from Canada. And as soon as I said that, he was like, "What? Oh, why are we going after these kids?" I was like, "Wait a minute, you just said you love this film."
Mm-hmm. Who was
Like,
this? It
this
was
is
Tom
Malik. No,
Malik.
this is Malik talking. All right. And so that spawned everybody like, "Oh man, can't recruit players from this place."
Mm-hmm.
Are we recruiting aliens? Like, so
Right.
that's is where that's
Gotcha.
exactly where this is coming
Because
from.
we
But
had
no, I don't.
apparently you guys had an alien. Was this last week? Because like I know there was a million alien. I jumped on at one point in time last week. I'm like, why is the chat talking about aliens nonstop?
Yeah,
What the flipping
dude,
heck is going on here, man? But we are not going to talk about aliens in this show, guys. This is a
no,
football channel, and some of y'all tell you what.
but no, I don't think they're recruiting any aliens. But they are scouring the entire United States for the
Can he
best
run and
football
catch?
players.
Can he rush the quarterback? Okay.
What is the dream career? I'm sorry, Pete Weber. Thank you for the super chat. What is the dream career trajectory for Chad Bowden? What aspirations does he have beyond indie recruiting?
I
Any
honestly,
that you might expect.
I don't know. I have no idea what his aspirations are. I don't. I know he loves. I know he loves what he does. I mean, that's obvious. Just you watch a 2-minute video of him, you know the guy loves what he does. What are his career? I mean, does he want to be a GM in football? I don't know. I don't have any idea. I mean, when I mean GM, I mean for college, and
College,
I don't know. I have no idea what Chad says. I don't know Chad like that to where I would have any idea what his career aspirations are. Plus, I don't know if Chad takes a deep enough breath to haven't thought out that much. He's such a grinder. I mean, I don't mean that disrespectfully at all. I mean that because he's always so focused on the task at hand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure he does, right? I mean, he's a sharp guy. I'm sure he does have career goals, but like, I think he's so task oriented that I doubt it's something he spends a ton of time talking about,
Mm-hmm.
even though he does have those goals. And so, and I think Chad is Chad is very driven to win at Notre Dame. I mean, and some of the few conversations I've had with him, I mean, that's something that you'll hear a lot. It's like, we can win here. I know we can win here, and we just got to go make it happen. And there's
Notre
a lot of
Dame,
loyalty to Marcus Freeman as well.
Notre Dame just sounds like a place where you don't want to leave once you start working there, because it's a really great place to work. It's like one of those jobs you never leave. Right? It's almost like a teacher getting into like that top, school system where the salaries are great, the support is great. You work with great kids, and I'm sure he has aspirations.
Sure, I would think
everybody does. Like, yeah, but has he reached that? I think he set a goal that he wants to bring a championship. Now, once if they reach that goal, then all bets might be off. He's like, okay, I accomplished that. Now I can move on to the next challenge.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to keep him. He's like Mickens, and I mean, just keep him around as long as you can.
As long as you can.
Yep.
Michael, thank you for the mailbag. Who would be the high floor, high ceiling wide receivers in 25 that Notre Dame is in on and have the best shot at? Thanks.
Well, I mean, there's a lot, low floor, high ceiling guys. I mean, Sean, when I look at the board, I think there's a decent amount of those. I'm so trying to navigate this to pull up the offer.
Well, we said out of the offers, are you including everybody, even the new offers, or is this just
everybody? Yeah,
okay.
Anyone that's on the board in 25 that's a high floor, high ceiling guy. I mean, the first guy that comes to mind for me, the first two are guys we talk about all the time, Taylor and Dalen McCutcheon. They're both high floor, high ceiling guys. I mean, they're both that way.
Yes.
Some other guys that are newer to the board, I don't know. Right. Like, I think Quincy Porter's kind of a high floor, high ceiling guy. I don't know where Notre Dame stands with him. I don't know how much they're on him. I don't know how much he likes them. I need to see him get back on campus again before I feel that they're really a player. I think there's mutual interest between the two. I'm not sure what the mutual interest, the level of the mutual interest is between the two. I hope it's higher because I like Quincy Porter. I'd take Quincy Porter over Derek Meadows personally. because even though maybe Derek Meadows has a higher ceiling, I think Quincy Porter has the higher floor.
Yeah.
And I do think Notre Dame needs a big guy in the class. I'd prefer at least one, and not it only be Jerome Bettis Jr. Like that. That's my concern, is that's going to be their big guy in the class, is Jerome Bettis Jr., who's turned into a big guy. He's like 6'3" now. He's like 6'3", 210 now. He's turned into a pretty big kid. Like, it's funny, we have our board and we haven't updated it yet, but when we first put him on the board over a year ago, we had him down at 6'2", 175. He's like 6'3", over 200 pounds now. He's filled out. He just, well, let me get into that right now. But those are the first two off the top of my head. Michael Terry's a new offer, but again, I don't know where they stand with him. They just offered him a couple days ago. We'll talk more when he comes on campus. But like Elijah Burris, to me, I have a tough time with this one, Sean, because I see his ranking and I see his offer list, and then I watch the film, and I've actually was able to find a game film, and I'm like, I don't know why this kid's not considered a much, much, much higher ranked player. I don't get it. I mean, I see a lot of ability. I see a high floor and a high ceiling there. So he's another one, and I think Notre Dame is in a great place. So I think those are probably the three right now most likely to pick Notre Dame guys that are high floor, high ceiling. Now, I'm not saying they're going to get any of those guys. I'm just saying those are the guys they have the best shot at right now. Like Lex Cyrus, he needs to get on campus first.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah Terry, they need to get on campus first. Those three. Sean Terry, to me, is not that level of player for me. He's a little bit different. Raiden Vines Bright, need to see him get on campus. Nas Newkirk, need to see him get on campus. So a lot of those guys that are new offers, it's like, let's see where they are first. But Taylor Taylor, Dalen McCutcheon, Elijah Burris, to me, are three high floor, high ceiling guys to me. What are your thoughts on Elijah Burris, Sean? I know you've seen
I love the kid. No, I love the kid. Immediately, that was the first time I watched this film. I was like, yo, you can tell the position. He has an understanding, and he should, because of who his father is. Like, he went into knowing how to play wide receiver, suddenness, getting in and out of breaks, route running at a young age. He has that. He's just not this receiver that's just immensely talented and fast and just can run by everybody. He actually knows the nuance of the position. We haven't seen the production. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. That's really the only box he needs to check, in my opinion, to be a fast riser in the recruiting rank. If he gets the production next year for DePaul,
right,
that's it.
Right.
That's it. Other teams and other programs will probably start making offers. And, he'll probably go around the circuit, and teams will be able to watch him on the summer circuit this year, going to camps and everything. So I love him. I absolutely love him. But, you just need to see the production. If he had the production right now, he would be a 4-star kid, probably top 200.
Yeah. And he's got a kid that's on his team that's
a 4-star. Yeah.
That has more production. But like, you watch film and I'm like, they're both getting wide open. The quarterback just looks at the other guy more. I mean, there was one play where they both ran corner routes and both smoked dudes, and his was a more impressive one, but the quarterback never looked at him. He looked to the right the whole time. I couldn't tell you. But all I know is the film I've seen is really impressive. Really, really impressive.
Yeah. And that is, I know that you just asked a question. I think Jim made a statement earlier when we were talking about the new offers, and Jim said that, you can't be a playmaker without speed.
That's not true.
And I pushed back on that. And then he said, well, you can't. He changed it to something else. Because I'm like, yo, there's been plenty of playmakers at the position. Tim Brown was a playmaker and wasn't like.
Well, especially after his knee injury. Like, he was fast early on, but after his knee injury,
he still was a playmaker.
He became a better player, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, Jerry Rice was a 4-6
playmaker.
Guy. I mean, Cooper Perry's a playmaker. I mean, look, here's the thing. Like, some positions, defense, I think pure speed is more important than offense. I do believe that. I do believe on defense, pure speed is more important on offense. I think on offense, and this is true, right? I have a buddy, we had this argument about running. Like, he asked me about a running back yesterday, and his first question was, is he fast?
Yeah.
And I said, dude, that should never be the first question you ask about a running back. That should be like question number 5 at the most. Because I've seen a lot of really fast running backs that couldn't play. Munir Prince, you know what I mean? Like, remember the whoosh, the thing? Kid couldn't play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Trent Richardson, really fast. Got to the NFL, and you realize he's just big and fast. He can't play running back.
Yeah.
And then there's other guys, Kyron Williams, 4'6" guy, not a big guy, and a 1,000-yard runner in the NFL right now. You know, it's a fifth-round draft pick. So
yeah,
because and the reason I say that, Jim, just because Jim there was a question that Jim had, and it was about, you know, why does Notre Dame recruit smaller receivers who aren't burners? And again, because the craft of playing, I've said this a million times, but the craft is so important in wide receiver. That's why we see guys like DeAndre Hopkins. Now, DeAndre's a little different than this because DeAndre's over 6 feet tall, but DeAndre Hopkins is a 4'6" guy. Jarvis Landry is 5'11" and ran a 4'7" at the combine. And he was a playmaker in college, and has been a pretty good wide receiver in the NFL. If I'm correct, I believe he's had some 1,000-yard seasons or close to in the NFL as well.
Yeah.
But look, the craft is so important, and there is a premium on quickness at receiver that can overcome speed. And so if I'm a sudden, there's Peter Warwick's another guy. I remember people being shocked.
Man, like a 4.5.
Yeah,
4.55 at the combine or something like that.
And people were like, wow, I thought he was going to be faster than that. You're like, no, because he's a 4.55, but he's a 4.55 like right now, you know, and that's the thing you got to look at and say, hey, there's speed, and then there's playing speed. And when people understand what the difference is exactly that, Sean. It's okay, you may own 4.58 is Peter Warwick was 5'11", 194, ran a 4.58.
Yeah.
But he was a dynamic player because his 4.58, he was a 4.58 right now. He can make a cut and be out of that cut at 4.58.
At 4.58, yes.
Where if you go back and watch Will Fuller play, Will Fuller was a guy that built speed up. Will was not a first step explosive guy. He was a gaining speed guy, and that's why he was such a great vertical player. Well, Peter Warwick was never a vertical player like Will Fuller was. Peter Warwick was like, get the ball in his hands now. But the other thing Peter Warwick could do to get open was he was a good route runner in college. And you could gain separation because if I'm quick, I'm going to gain separation on you out of my break because of my suddenness. Now, if it's a deeper route, you may eventually catch me if you're a faster guy. But I'm going to get that separation, which is why you can be a playmaker. Because once I get the ball in my hands, you know, I can make you miss. And so I think that there's just speed is, it's great to have that and speed. I'm not saying that's not great, but I just feel that sometimes we overrate that way too much. Now, you can't have a receiving core full of 5'11", 4'6" guys. No one's saying that, and Notre Dame's not recruiting that. Taylon Taylor's a burner. You know, Dalen McCutcheon can run. There's plenty of those guys. Lex Cyrus is a burner. I don't know who all these like Lex Cyrus is a 5'10" guy that can freaking fly. So that's a new offer that they had of a guy that can run. I don't know that a lot of the guys they have offered are 6 feet or less and under 200 pounds who aren't burners. Most of the guys that they've offered like that are pretty fast. But I just think the craft is so important. Dexter Williams, another great example. Dexter Williams was literally a touchdown waiting to happen every time he touched football in Notre Dame. And he went to the combine and went to pro day and ran a 4.58. And was he out of shape? No, that's just who he is. And Josh Adams ran a 4.40. It would have busted up foot.
Yeah.
And I would argue that Dex was the better all-around running back when he finally matured. That was always Dex's problem, was just maturity. Let's be honest. But, now that might have hurt Dexter. The speed might hurt you more in the NFL than in college, right? But, Cooper Kupp's – does anyone want to argue that Cooper Kupp's not a playmaker?
How about Puka Nacua?
What was his 40 time coming out?
I think Puka might have been like high 4.4.
I'm gonna look at it right now and see what his times were right here. So pro day stats for him. He ran a 4.57.
Oh,
at
wow.
his pro day last year. So yeah.
He took
with a 33-inch vertical jump and a 4.3 shuttle. So none of his testing numbers were impressive, but he can play. Right? He can play.
And how does that play now? See, I'm glad. Let's nuance this. He can play, but I would venture to say other people looked at based upon their philosophy about offense and said, but Sean McVay, who specializes in that type of receiver and his offense with motion and bunch and being able to get guys that know how to run routes, he's like, oh, this kid could be very productive in my offense. And this
Right.
is something like I think Mike Denbrock, 3 different type of receivers. His receivers weren't the same, but all of them were able to be productive in his offense. So why would you want to recruit the same type of receivers? Like, no, you have to have 6-foot receivers. You need Cam Williams in your room. Then you need to go and you have a Deion Cozy in your room who's like a big physical guy, Jaden Thomas. And then you go and get the smaller guys, Jordan Faison, Lex Cyrus,
Yeah.
Elijah Burris.
Look at LSU in 2019, right? Like they were all tall-ish. I mean, Jamar Chase was the shortest at 6'1", but they were very different. Jamar Chase and Jordan Jefferson have completely different games.
Absolutely.
Both great. And then Terrace Marshall was completely different from the two of them.
Absolutely.
You had the Bama crew, but that's also got Bama in trouble at times because when they played teams that just had pure cover guys, they could kind of like that's what Clemson did to them in 2018. Trayvon Mullen could run with them, and AJ Terrell beat them up because they were all small. They had a couple plays in that game, but they couldn't get that offense going. Where even like when you look at the 2020 offense, for example, Devontae Smith and John Mechie were both smaller guys, but they were very different players.
Very different.
John Mechie was basically like a running back playing wide receiver in a lot of different ways, where Devontae was that, and Devontae Smith's another guy that didn't have a phenomenal, like just knock your socks off 40 time either. Yeah. But think about this. Talk about Sean McVay. That dude had what did Puka do? Puka was one of the leading receivers in the NFL this year, correct?
Yes.
Like numbers wise, actually, I'm going to look this up because I want to make a point here. So this past season, Kyron Williams was the number 3 rusher in the NFL yards wise for the Lions. And then Puka was the number 4 yards guy, receiver. I mean, not for the Rams, excuse me. Kyron plays for the Rams, and then Puka plays for the Rams. They were both 5th-round draft picks. Why? Because the NFL devalued them because of their speed. But they're both playmakers. They were playmakers in college, and they're playmakers in the NFL. And because they were both guys that just weren't fast. And so again, you can focus on those traits, and at times those traits do matter. I'm not trying to tell you that and dismiss those things. I hope that you don't take it that way, Jim, where I do want speed. And if all things being equal, I want a guy with Puka Nakua's skill and Cooper Kupp's skill and all those things that can also run a 4.3. Of course I'd want that, right?
Yeah.
But those guys are rare, and so to me, at that position more than any other, I just value.
Playmaking.
Yeah, I mean, can you master the craft? I mean, Puka knows how to play the game. That's really what it boils down to. He knows how to play the game, and the rest of it just doesn't matter as much. Actually, Devontae Smith did not run a 40 time because he was coming off. He had something he was dealing with, but I bet you he was not a 4.3, low 4.4 guy. I bet he just was super quick out of his break. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Now, Jim, if you're talking about shorter guys that are all doing work at 5 to 10 yards, and this is where I think Jim has some, like if it's you're recruiting a bunch of 5'11", 175-pound guys that run 4.6s that all do their work on quick game and screens, and you're not going to have a very good receiving core, right? And that's one of the criticisms I had of Duke's guys. Like Duke had these 6-foot kind of shifty. They all were like quick game, crossers, slants, but they didn't have guys that can make plays down the field this year, and it hurt their pass game. And so, you can give me 1 or 2 of those guys, but I also need that complementary skill set. And if you look at what Notre Dame is doing, that's what they're putting together is a complementary skill set with their players. So, yeah,
that was actually a great conversation that was going on in the chat, about the wide receiver position, about playmaking, speed, quickness, things of that nature. The only thing I pushed that back on was like, you could be a playmaker without having speed. Like there's too many people in a Pro Football Hall of Fame that weren't fast, but found a way to make plays. So
yeah,
I wouldn't. What did Golden Tate run at the?
It's like a 4.47, 4.48, something like that. Yeah.
Okay,
just good speed, but not burner stuff. So, but yeah, like it, I like speed, I do, but I need guys that can play first. That's the reality of it. I need guys that can play first. Troy Pride was a 4.4 flat guy. Julian Love ran a mid 4.5. Who was the better player in college?
Yeah, Julian.
Right. Troy was good. Don't get me wrong. Troy's a good football player and a very underrated Notre Dame player, but who was the better player? It was Julian.
Yeah.
And why? Because, I mean, he could play. And Julian was also very quick. He wasn't a burner, but he's very quick. He can move. His movements were easy and fluid and loose and all that kind of stuff. So, those are things that you look at, Sean, that you got to, on offense more than defense especially, you have to put value on the craft. And Notre Dame is recruiting guys that have some of those attributes, and that's something that I look for. So good question, good conversation, Jim. Very good discussion, I thought.
Archer 452, which players are the class leaders for 2025 in peer recruiting? Are any families being vocal to lead peer recruiting as well?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think the top lead recruiter for Notre Dame right now, vocally, is that Plies dude, right? So, but amongst them,
the fact you said that Plies dude.
I don't know who that guy is. People told me he's a rapper. I never heard of him before, but I like him because he's pushing Notre Dame. So I'm down with it. So
he's retired. He's a retired rapper, but he is very successful in business as well. He's one of the most thought provoking,
very uplifting.
Rappers that have come through that got in, got out.
Yeah, stop looking for this. Build yourselves up. Build the community up. I don't know who he is, but I like the message from what I've seen, and he's pushing Notre Dame. But Deuce Knight's obviously a big one. He's a big leader of this class so far. Justin Thurman's very engaged in that regard. Davion Dixon, and now some of these guys do it social media wise. Some guys are doing it behind the scenes. Ivan Taylor's been pretty involved in it. Ike Taylor's a very publicly pro Notre Dame parent. And which is good because he does bring that dude playing the NFL for a decade type of thing to the table. And so he's a parent that's very involved in that.
Great story Ryan wrote about that, about the family and the faith and how that eventually led.
We'll have that interview up tomorrow. I'll put he did the video interview up and the podcast form will be up. But yes, and you talk about like parents understanding different roles. Mom, this is what mom does. This is what dad does. And together they're raising a great kid, but very pro Notre Dame. Ike Taylor's very pro Notre Dame. So I would imagine if Jerome Bettis Jr. joins the class at some point in time, his dad will even be more pro Notre Dame with this recruiting class.
Did you see the big eyes from recruits, and they wanted to take pictures with them? It's like,
oh yeah.
Yo, that's incredible.
Oh yeah. I mean, they know who that is. Could you imagine if Notre Dame has a 2-year recruiting class in which they add Bryce Young's kid, Jerome Bettis's kid, Ike Taylor's kid, Plexico Burris's kid, and I feel like I'm missing something. Wasn't there somebody? Oh, and then Jim Flanagan's kid.
Yeah.
Like, and am I missing somebody on offense?
Ryan Urlacher's kid.
Ryan Urlacher's kid. I felt like there was somebody on offense.
Ryan Clark's kid via the portal.
Yes. I mean, you got all these like known. We named at least 3 Hall of Famers right there, whose kids are coming to play for Notre Dame, and not all, 2 of them are Notre Dame guys, but the third one was not a Notre Dame guy. So there's a reason why so many NFL guys who had no affiliation whatsoever with Notre Dame are pushing their kids to Notre Dame the way that they are.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Multiple reasons. Yeah.
Right. Some of them, but see, here's the thing though, but now Notre Dame's got a better football product to sell. That's important. That's very important. Very, very important part of that conversation. Got a question from Back Up. Did Notre Dame blow all their NIL money on Riley Leonard? It feels like the rest of the transfers are just able bodies. I strongly disagree with that take. Strongly disagree with that take. First of all, they don't have a NIL budget. That's not how it works in Notre Dame. But to call Chris Mitchell and like RJ Oben and Bo Collins, first team All-American kick returner, Rod Hurd, I mean, to call them just able bodies, I got to strongly disagree with that. Like, really strongly disagree with that one. Very much so. But no, they don't have a budget. If there were 8 guys that brought NIL value like Riley Leonard that wanted to come to Notre Dame and fit all the other criteria, they'd sign them all. This is who they wanted. And I would push back. Maybe you disagree, Sean, but I absolutely push back on the notion that these guys are all.
Well, I would have to, able bodies to me sounds like just depth guys.
Right.
I mean, you go look at Chris Mitchell's film and his production. I don't care who he's playing against. Like that kid, NFL scouts are looking at that kid.
Right.
Big time. That's not an able body. RJ Open. Go watch RJ Open against Notre Dame.
Right. He's got the only sack against Joe Alt the last 2 years.
It's
Well,
like,
another thing, too, is like, Sean, you can talk about Chris Mitchell and the production he had, but let's not forget that guy played on the road against an SEC school last year and had 6 catches for 157 yards.
yeah.
Right. And a lot of his yards came early. It wasn't like when
Garbage
Javaris
time.
Daniels had 100 yards against Bama,
Yeah.
and a lot of that came when the game
Late.
was kind of over.
Yeah.
You know, this kid was making big plays in the first half. I mean, some of his
Yeah.
best games last year were against like Liberty, Jacksonville State, you know, some of the best teams on their Arkansas, some of the best teams they played last year. So and that was for a team that did not throw the ball very much. That's the other part of it. He had half their passing touchdowns and not too far away from having half the receiving yards, meaning everybody knew he was primarily getting the ball.
Yeah.
And they still couldn't stop him.
Yeah.
So I would definitely push back on the notion that they are just able bodies.
I actually think they went and got guys to help Riley Leonard.
Yes,
to
agreed.
supplement the quarterback transfer. That was a must, and I think they did a good job. And there's some guys that you might, Kelly and some other guys that visited that you might have preferred. All right, that's fine. I don't.
Who?
If you prefer the kid to transfer from not Arizona State, he's the wide receiver that came in.
From Jamal Banks.
Jamal Banks. No, not Jamal Banks from Wake Forest. That was another kid.
The kid from Washington State. Yeah,
Washington State. Josh Kelly. Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, if you prefer,
look, I think Chris Mitchell's a better player than Josh Kelly. I've said this a bunch.
Yeah,
he is. That kid's film was really impressive. And look, RJ Oben has more impressive film and production at Duke than Javonte Jean-Baptiste had at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Clark has a lot more production and snaps played at Arizona State than Thomas Harper had at Oklahoma State. And Rod Hurd is a significantly more proven player at safety in that position than what Antonio Carter was. So, I mean, defensively, we saw the impact that the transfer portal class had last year. They are not the defense they are without those two guys. And you just landed two guys that they may not be as good as them when they get to Notre Dame. That's always a transition question. But coming in, were much better pickups than what they got last year, in some areas. And I think there's the third is a significantly better upgrade. I think the kicker is an upgrade, and so I definitely push back on that a little bit. And we'll find out. We'll find out who's right when we get to the season, but I'm going to push back on that a little bit.
Can we get a 4-hour show? Super chat Indy Milton fan, thank you. Can we get a 4-hour show? I feel like it's needed. Saturdays coming to you soon.
Well, we've only got 4 questions here, but knowing Sean and I, 4 questions could lead us another 38 minutes, so we might get one today. But yeah, I think we'll have to figure out what the schedule is, but we're going to get started on the RTCF show here over the next few weeks. We're not sure what the actual launch date is. Just so you all understand, we're in the process of we had that bad flood in our house in November. And so we've just been dealing with that for the last 2 months. They're finally going to start demolition and tearing up the walls and the floor and put new flooring down and all that stuff for that, starting, I think, the first week of February. And so for that 6 weeks, we're going to be living upstairs, and that's all we're going to have, right? So I'm going to actually be doing shows from another location, a secret IB location. But I need to figure out what that schedule is going to look like before we commit to the RTCF show, because once we start doing it, we want to make it regular. We want it to be most Saturdays.
Yeah.
So Sean and I are working through the schedules. We'll figure that out. But it'll definitely launch before spring ball, and hopefully sooner rather than later, because Sean and I have a lot we want to talk about.
As always.
And for those who don't remember, RTCF, Recruiting Team College Football, is what that stands for. So we'll have multiple topics every day. So yeah, they'll have plenty of 4-hour shows on those Saturdays. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Leighton Borkholder. Hey, Brian and Sean, I heard Guzzi give a take the other day that he thinks Minchie is better than Carr because his release point is high, whereas Carr's is at his shoulder. Thoughts?
I don't, Leighton, I don't like responding to things that people say where I'm being told what they said without hearing it. Because I've had people go to other hosts and say, Driscoll said this. And I'm like, that's not at all what I said. I'll just say this.
I think it was a social media post.
Okay.
I think it was.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
But I would have to think that there's more to it than that, than just he thinks one's better than the other because of the release point. There has to be a better argument than that. Maybe it's the release point creates better spin ratio. Maybe he's more accurate because, there has to be more than just his release point is better. I'm sure that I'd be shocked if Mike Goolsby, that was it. Like, that's the only take. The other thing is, I think CJ Carr is slightly better than Kenny Minchie, but Sean, everybody, I will not be at all shocked if Kenny Minchie's Notre Dame starting quarterback after Riley Leonard's gone. I will not be shocked at all. They're both very good players, both very high IQ football players. And I think you could make a case that Kenny has a better arm than CJ. I think you could definitely make that case. I think CJ's the better athlete, and I think CJ has some experiential things over Kenny. They're both excellent players. And I don't really care who's better. I'll tell you one thing I'm not going to do here at IB. We're not going to get into the whole Kenny versus CJ thing. I don't care who it is. They're both excellent quarterbacks. Whoever wins that battle, play them. I'm good. So you're not going to hear me push back and say, oh, no, CJ's. I had CJ graded higher because I think CJ's more advanced than Kenny was. I have also argued in the past that I think Kenny might have a higher ceiling than CJ because he has, to me, a better arm. A more live arm. But when you watch Kenny and CJ both throw side by side, which we had a chance to do in December, you just look at it and you're not like, I didn't look at it like, oh, whose is better? I just watch them like, those are two gorgeous footballs coming out of those kids' hands. You start feeling really good about the future of the quarterback position. And I don't know who's going to win that battle. But man, you just like Vince, I think it was Vince that said it. I can't remember. I think Vince said it to me. I don't think I said it to him, but we were watching, it was Kenny and CJ on one side, and then it was Gino Guidugli and Steve Angeli on the other side. And they were kind of doing that tandem thing where they both throw at the same time. And I think it was Vince looks over to me and says, the ball looks a whole lot different coming this way than it does going back that way.
Well, I can tell you this, it was, I believe it was Steve, Sam, Tyler, and I forget who the other, the walk-on kid.
Dylan. Talking about in the spring, yeah.
In the spring, Dylan and then Kenny.
Yeah.
It's going to look a whole lot different in those warm-ups this year.
It did.
With the quarterbacks they have.
100% with Riley
a lot more
and
zip.
Kenny. Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
The talent, if you think about it, 2 years ago, Notre Dame was dealing with basically, it was Tyler Buckner and hoping he could be what we hoped, Drew Pine and Steve Angeli.
Mm-hmm.
This year, it's going to be Riley Leonard, Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr, and Steve Angeli. Like in a hurry, the talent level at quarterback has gotten a lot better. Tyler
might have been hurt by that, Brian. He didn't have anybody to push him.
No,
that was really.
He was always so much better than Drew.
Yes. And see, Riley's the guy, but Riley's going to get pushed.
Right. Well,
like Riley's not just going to be in practice. Like, no, it's some dudes coming.
And I think it's more so about what it does for Kenny and CJ.
Yes.
Because they're both going to have to battle. Mm-hmm. And then when Deuce shows up, it only raises the bar even higher. That's the thing is like, look, may the best man win. I really hope that that Notre Dame fans can avoid the whole I'm team CJ, I'm team Kenny, I'm team Deuce. It doesn't matter. They're all Notre Dame quarterbacks. Whoever wins the battle, as long as it's a fair competition. This was my beef in 2016, Sean. You remember. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that Deshaun won the battle. It's that I always felt that the battle was rigged for Deshaun to win. That's the difference. If it was a fair battle and Deshaun just outplayed Malik, so be it. But I never felt like it was always they're playing on Deshaun's. They're battling to run Deshaun, a Deshaun favored offense, not a let's see who, because and then when they put like Malik in against Texas, they're asking him to run the same offense that Deshaun ran. They're different quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what would have looked like if they were asking Deshaun to run an offense that was more favored towards Malik, right? So that's my thing is as long as it's a fair, honest competition, I don't care who wins because they're all really talented. And so I don't really have any interest in getting into well, this guy thinks he's better or that. And I don't want to respond to something that Mike said that I didn't hear or see. But I have to think that there's, the release point is higher, which equals A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
That's probably, I would hope that would be more like what the argument was. Because you could say, like, hey, this guy's release point creates issues with the trajectory of the ball. It creates issues with accuracy. It's not as catchable because of the release point. I mean, those would be fair arguments that are a result of, in your opinion, of the release point.
Yeah.
That would be more understandable. But if it's just this guy's got a higher release point, so he'll be better, that I have to think there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I think the video with Kenny working out kind of elevated the buzz. Because remember, the buzz was all about CJ.
Yeah.
And then they released the video of Kenny working out over Christmas break, and it's like everybody's like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "Yeah, we've been saying that about his arm since
ranked him as a top 100 player coming out of high school." I mean, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Again, I just don't know why we have to turn it into this guy's better than that guy, whatever. I mean, they're both very talented. I just have to think there's more to it. Like, and again, I also don't think that's accurate. I don't think that Kenny's release point's all that higher than CJ's, if at all. I think they both kind of have they both change arm angles a ton. I mean, I've seen Kenny throw the ball from down here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes he'll be over here and sometimes he's here and sometimes he's here. I mean, Kenny can change the arm angle really effectively, in my opinion. So I have to think that Mike's a smart guy. I have to think there was more. That's why I don't respond to what he said, because I have to think there's more. There's got to be more nuance to it than just that. But either way, look,
probably was.
I think they're both really good football. They're both really good quarterbacks. And if one of those guys wins the starting job at Notre Dame someday, I'm happy. They're going to be really good players, in my opinion. And the talent level around them is being raised to such a degree that they're not going to have to carry the team like some of the other guys did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're just not. I mean, think about by the time Kenny or CJ become the starter in 2025, you think about what the talent level around them will look like, just compared to what Jack Cohn's one season was at Notre Dame. Or, you know what I mean? It's just like, goodness gracious. Or Ian's, like Ian's last year.
Right.
Where you had Javon McKinley and Ben Skoranek and freshman Michael Mayer and Avery Davis and Kyron Williams. I mean, some good players, but you look at it and you're like, think about what the running back room is going to look like in 2025. Think about what the receiving core is going to look like in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
What the talent level in the offensive line is going to look like in 2025. And you're like, now you just need your quarterback to go do your thing, right? Yeah. But man, they can both play. Those are really good football players. So good question, Leighton.
I got Salty Virginia Peanuts. Thank you for the super chat. Is it a reasonable strategy to hire an analyst for every coaching position to expand capacity and to have a person that is already there in case the coach leaves?
I mean, if you can do something like that, I would think there'd be benefits to that. Basically, every coach has an assistant, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
There's merit to that. Yeah, I don't know that necessarily you would want to do it for the reason that you stated, though, Salty. Like, Sean, if you had it in you to where, the quarterback's coach kind of had an analyst that worked with him, and then the quarterback's coach can kind of say, hey, you can have freedom to have him work on whatever you want. Like, I really need you to be focused on, this part of their development, right? And doing this type of breakdown. And then you have some analysts that are kind of focused on opponents and stuff like that. There's merit to that. Certainly merit to that. Like, hey, I'm gonna take we're getting ready to go play Florida State. I'm gonna take the veterans over here. I want my assistant guy, my analyst guy, to really get in the film room with the younger players. Like, this is what I would do if I was a receivers coach at Notre Dame and I had an analyst who was my analyst. He'd spend a lot of, because they can do film rooms with players. I'd be like, every week you're spending time with the scout team receivers, going over their practice film on the scout team. Like, every Monday as we're prepping for the opponent, you're in there with them, going over, coaching them up on different things, because kids don't get a lot of that opportunity right now. Like, that's something I would do. and then he would have some other roles and things like that. But like that'd be a great asset. I don't think the people you're going to hire for that though are going to be the automatic replacements for at all those jobs for someone that steps away. Like if Mike Brown leaves next year, I'm not sliding Trent Miles into the receiver coach job.
Right.
I'd go hire somebody else.
Right.
And that role is perfect for him. What I would like to see done is for the analyst position to become more valued financially and responsibility wise, where coaches value having that role. If you're a coach who doesn't like to recruit, this is a perfect job for you because I can just have you be a lab rat. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like just, you're just in the lab all the time, man, film and breaking down stats, breaking down numbers, doing all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
That's one of the things Malik pointed out about Matt LaFleur during his time. Malik was like, he was a nerd.
Right.
That's all he do. He was a nerd. And he
Right.
was like, you see why he's become the coach that he's become.
Hated recruiting.
Like, he hated recruiting. But he loved like film, breaking down numbers, and like, he can break it down.
That's why the NFL is good for him.
Yeah.
Because that's more he doesn't have to worry about putting a roster together. He doesn't have to worry about, a lot of the stuff that college coaches have to do. It just comes down to,
and that's the NFL
football.
life for coaches, right? Come in at 7 and leave at 10 p.m. That is. So, yeah.
So I think there's merit to that, Salty. It would be more just as analysts, not so much you get your built-in replacements. Because your built-in replacement for your O-line coach is coaching someone's offensive line. Unless you're in a unique situation where you have a young guy like let's say that Notre Dame was able to convince Chris Watt to come back and be an analyst for a year or two and then groom him to replace Joe Rudolph. Totally fine with that.
Yeah.
But that's a unique situation that doesn't happen often. Maybe you have a former player who wants to get into coaching that's willing to come be an analyst for you for a couple of years. And if he proves himself, then maybe you just, like I've said this in the past, Sean, about Golden Tate. Golden Tate's mentioned about wanting to get into coaching. I said, dude, I would hire him as an analyst right now.
Heartbeat.
And be like, dude, you're a sponge. You're here to learn. And if he shows an aptitude for it, then, maybe if Mike Brown gets an OC job somewhere or head coach job somewhere, Golden's ready to step right in. If the guy has an aptitude. But here's the thing, which y'all have to understand, not every former player has the aptitude to be a coach. That's why and that's true. And it's more, what sport that's less true in? Baseball. You see a lot of former really good players turn into really good managers and coaches in baseball. But in NBA, especially in Michael Jordan's been not a very good executive. Magic was a terrible coach. I mean, the only guy that's shown any aptitude for is like Bird, Doc. I'm trying to like Jerry West. I mean, there's been some
was an okay player.
Yeah, but I mean, guys like Doc was Doc was an NBA All-Star. Bird was a legend, right? Jerry West was a legend, but not like the Pat Rileys who had a cup of coffee, or Steve Kerr who was a sidekick kind of guy. I mean, Rudy Tomjanovich played in the NBA for a while, but he wasn't a star. He was actually thinking he was an all-star.
Mark Jackson was a pretty good coach.
Yeah.
He's a pretty good coach.
Which is weird. He still hasn't gotten another shot in the NBA, but that's a different conversation for a different a different day. But Charles Oakley's talked about this. Dude, I coached for a minute. I hated it. It's why? He's because guys today are different. But it's because the point isn't that debate, but his thing is, I had a hard time relating to players that weren't like me. Like a guy like John Elway, you can't coach that. I can't coach the way that I played. Michael Jordan can't coach the way that he played. Magic can't coach the way that he played. Bird can, to a degree, because his game was more put in the work, mental, that kind of thing. And I think maybe that's partly why Bird was a better coach and an executive than maybe some of these other guys. But because people forget that probably the toughest championship series the Bulls had during their 6-year run, you could argue, was the year that they beat the Pacers in 7 with Bird as the head coach. I still love that Reggie Miller story. He talks about how Reggie hit that shot to go up and the whole place is going nuts, and Bird's just over there just
standing there.
Just chilling.
Standing there. Right.
He's done that 100 times.
And they left 0.9 on the clock, and Michael Jordan lipped out a 30.
Because Bird knew.
He
Purdue.
knew,
Crap.
like, that dude still has a chance, and that ball did this.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my, you have to be kidding me. That is
Yep.
it. Just in to like, man, tie a nice little bow on what you talked about. I think the analyst position is vitally important. We saw the benefit up through Steve Sarkisian has always been a great head coach, but the analyst hires, you saw how it elevated the program at Texas with his analyst hires, and hopefully Trent Miles elevates things, makes things better. And Notre Dame seems to be valuing that. What happened?
Go read Salty's response at 442 about how he loves when answers the questions don't start.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I saw that going back to SNL. Yeah. I saw that.
That's a great skit, by the way. We can't read that on the show.
Yeah. I saw it when he typed.
I'm sorry, Sean. I didn't mean to interrupt you, man. I just saw
No.
It just kind of hit
I knew
me.
it had to be funny. I'm like, okay.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry about that. Please continue.
But no, to value the analyst positions, right? There's tremendous value there, right? Because you have some veteran coaches that are in analyst positions, but then you have some young guys that are in analyst positions, like a Matt LaFleur, that have aspirations, but they're so locked in to the geek side of the game, dude. They're beneficial. Like Malik says, yo, they would just leave us with him. Like there was times Matt LaFleur would just be with the quarterbacks, just going over stuff with us. And he was like, yo, it was like some of the greatest conversations. And we would learn more from him in those times than we were learning
from anybody
else.
Coach.
Yeah. So that just goes to show you, man, the power of making the right hires. If you get a chance, this is not for the show. I want you to just go look at the 2002 Philadelphia Eagles.
Somebody, I saw that tweet today.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And you look at that and you're like, you got to be kidding me.
Well, the other thing too that's great, that's important about analysts too, Sean, is it allows you to break up responsibilities a little bit more. And I'll just put it this way: Notre Dame is getting ready to go play the national semifinal game against Alabama. Okay, and it's Mike Denbrock against Ryan Grubb, and it's Mike Denbrock and Gino and Mike Brown against Ryan Grubb and Jamarcus Shepard, and it's like that's a pretty even matchup. But then Ryan Grubb has 13, 14, 15 analysts that are breaking things down, and Notre Dame's got 3. Well, that means Mike Denbrock and Mike Brown and Gino have to do way more. And so it's like, or even if your numbers are the same and their analysts are like 5 former Division I coaches and yours are like 2 guys that are just kind of getting their start in the business, you're going to be at a disadvantage there if all the other things are equal. Those things can help you a ton. And so if Mike Denbrock doesn't have to spend all his time, because like when I coached and up until this analyst became a thing, Sean, like, Sunday night, we're diving into the opponent film. And sometimes I'd start watching opponent film on like Friday and we're done with all of our work. But I never liked that a ton because like I didn't want my mind going away from what's the next day. But somebody's got to start breaking this stuff down because, who else is going to do it? And so now it's like you don't have to worry about that. You get in there on a Sunday night, there's all these reports. The film stuff's already been broken down because the analysts have already broken down the numbers. The GAs and the video equipment people have kind of split everything in, and you've got your scouting reports, and we're ready to roll. And so I can just start diving right into third down. I can start diving right into formations and stuff like that because all that work's been done, and it's been done by people I trust. That's huge. And so that's also why it practically speaking, there's just a lot of value having like experience. There's value to having young guys too, right? But you need some experienced guys in these roles as well, because the teams you're trying to compete against are doing that. Like if you're going against Sark last year, you're not just going against Pete Kwiatkowski and the defensive staff. You got Gary Patterson in the back office giving ideas as well. And I'm going against that with some guy that's 23 years old and just got into coaching. He better be a flipping whiz because that's a lot, you know what I mean? And so that doesn't mean that those young guys don't have value.
No.
But it's nice to have that and a Trent Miles, a David Cutcliffe, somebody like that. There's always value to that. There's no doubt about it. So very, very good question. And then Sean, I think that's it, man. I think
All
that's it
right.
for the questions today. So good stuff, man. I enjoyed the show. See, Antoine. So is Antoine only on the show when I'm not? Is that Antoine? Is that how we roll, man? Like I haven't seen you in a minute, but then I'm not on the show today, and all of a sudden you're in here talking in the chat. I'm starting to feel a little hurt, man. Feeling a little hurt that you're only in here when I'm in here, man, or when I'm not here. So it makes me a little sad, Sean. Makes me a little sad. So, but that's good, man. You want to wrap it up here, Mr.
Hey,
Davis?
we thank you for joining us right here today on the Recruiting Hour. As always, we want you to go over to the message board at Irish Breakdown for all of our recruiting and all of our intel that we give you on a daily basis. Lock in, man. Sign up for the message board. Don't forget the IB store as well. Boards, irishbreakdown.com. All right. Thank you for the super chats, mailbag questions. Coming up, Sean Stiers, right?
5
You
o'clock.
guys,
Yeah.
5 o'clock. And you get more information coming up with us. RTCF will be coming up soon. And I'm super excited about the direction of this program and the 2025 recruiting class. We'll be back with you guys next Friday. And Irish Breakdown.
I don't think we have a show tonight, by the way.
Okay.
I think Sean's got some travel stuff with women's basketball tonight. So I don't
Oh,
think
because they play in stores. That's right. They play in stores this weekend. So Irish Breakdown will be back next week. The Recruiting Hour will be back next Friday. We thank you for always supporting. Make sure that you go to YouTube, subscribe, thumbs up, smash it for us. It helps us, man. The notification bell, that helps you because anytime we go live, you'll know. And then share and let everybody know about the Irish Breakdown podcast. For Brian Driscoll, I'm Sean Davis. Have a blessed weekend. And most of all, we thank you for joining us right here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Have a good one.